Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. I am your host, Q, coming to you yet again from my mother's basement. It is Wednesday, October 26th, and we have a jam-packed episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. I'm joined by my co-host, P. How goes it, P?
Amazing. It goes amazing. Applause. Bring it in. Thank you. I'm excited. Who have we got joining us today?
Pause. Did you just give yourself applause?
You're goddamn right I did. You want to give you some? You want some
No,
applause?
I don't.
All
I'm
right,
good.
fuck you, Chris. You're getting some applause. Guys, welcome Chris to the screen. Thank you so much, producer Chris. He's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is a little weird to give yourself applause. I want to earn it, but
So
I appreciate
weird.
that.
What does the
So
audience
weird.
think? Am I amazing? Yes. Yeah. See, everybody's into it.
Well, if you didn't know, P actually is filming in a live studio audience
That's
right now. So all he's pressing is that applause button, but secretly what it does is it shocks everyone sitting in the audience.
That's right.
It sends a small little shock so that they have to. But yes, it is Wednesday, so you know what day it is. We have Fed Watch for the last hour today. That'll kick off at about noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Before that, we are going to be joined by none other than international influencer himself, Marshall Long. And then we're going to kick things off now with some news and notes. A big win for freedom and a big story out of the state of New York. The New York State Supreme Court reinstates all fired unvaccinated employees and orders back pay, saying the state violated rights, acted arbitrarily and capricious. I hope I said that word right. Noted that being vaccinated does not prevent an individual from contracting or transmitting COVID-19. Look, this is a very important step forward, I think, in the readjustment back to normalcy. The idea that if you are vaccinated or you are not vaccinated, that makes you good or bad is a fallacy and a farce that the powers that be have convinced you that you should be angry and upset with your neighbors, your friends, your family, if they did something that you didn't do. What really hammers home for me, and if someone in the state of New York has information otherwise, like call me out, correct me if you want. The Supreme Court in New York State seems to be primarily appointed by Democratic governors and seems to be a little bit more left-leaning. Why do I bring this up? Well, this type of a mandate around vaccinations and the anti-vaccination push seems to be coming from the right, or so mainstream media would have you believe. And I want to highlight the fact again that this comes from a liberal court, a left-leaning court, making a determination and a decision that these vaccine and vaccine mandates are unjust and that these policies need to be corrected. I hope this is a step in the right direction. Maybe I'm trying to smoke some hopium at 10 a.m. Pacific time, but what do I know?
No, I think you nailed it, man. The whole COVID thing is a fascinating natural experiment, so to speak, in the way that information propagates through cultures and the way that different groups of people anchor themselves and their identities, their personal identities to those belief systems. It's pretty interesting to see how this happened in the Bitcoin community. You know, when COVID was first being talked about as something that was not a thing, right? In early 2020, the Bitcoin community was like, oh shit, this is 100% real, because Bitcoiners tend to be contrarian. And also there was all these discrepancies between the way that media was reporting it and what was actually going on, right? And then as things played out, as it became more acceptable to be supporting it, Bitcoiners, in my opinion, very justly, switched and started thinking of, based on the kind of lies that were coming out, started having different opinions. So now we're gone back the other way. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the future as more and more people come to understand the risks and potential issues with the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, I agree to everything that you guys echoed. It's very interesting. This comes from New York. It remains to be seen what happens to more left-leaning states like Q's state of California. Obviously, this is a state-by-state decision, whether they're going to, what they're going to do with this. So it remains to be seen how this is going to be enacted, basically. But very, very interesting nonetheless.
Crazy stuff. All right, let's talk about it. Title of this episode, CashApp, Jack Dorsey fucking crushing it as they always do. They have just added 40 million users to the Lightning Network. This is fucking huge. That is 3 times the entire population of the country of El Salvador. What do we mean by this? CashApp, for a long time, you've been able to buy and sell and send Bitcoin on the platform. Now you can do the same thing, but you can do it via the Lightning Network. Now, the user experience is the same. It's seamless. If you scan a Lightning QR code or generate an invoice, you're going through the same basic process as you would normally with BTC. However, you are now able to do that over the Lightning Network, which is essentially zero fee, and it is essentially instantaneous. I'm so excited that this is happening. This is a huge, huge moment for the Lightning Network, and could not be more excited. Yeah, it's massive. What do you guys think?
I think this is awesome. I think it's very, very cool with these large entities that they can onboard more and more users. Imagine I don't want to say like this is how it rolls out more, but I definitely think people that don't know about the Lightning Network are like, wow, this is really cool that like I receive Bitcoin on the Lightning Network very quickly, and they can learn the difference between main chain Bitcoin and the Lightning Network if they're that interested in it. I think this is a huge step. It'd be cool if we start to see even more companies like rolling it out to like Amazon or other big entities like that. But I think this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, look, this continues to further exemplify why Block is pushing forward global Bitcoin adoption. Prove how you do it in your house before you then essentially go externally and push this technology forward. This is sort of that test run, I think, at scale for the Lightning Network. We're about to like really test its capacity. I'd be interested and curious to see how many Cash App users take advantage of this product being rolled out. I'm very open and discuss that I get very upset when I have to spend my Bitcoin. However, I very consistently will just go ahead and buy the amount of Bitcoin I'm supposed to spend in that moment and then immediately spend said Bitcoin. Sure, I'll just do it on Cash App, I guess, for the time being.
Definitely.
Chris, let's talk to us about risk.
Yes, risk happens fast. What do I mean by that? Another one bites the dust. So Freeway, crypto platform that promised 43% returns. This is pretty astronomical, 43% returns with Halts Withdrawals. And Freeway's website has deleted the names and photos of some of the executives at the company. This is not good. As many Bitcoiners or Bitcoin maxis, I guess, have said in the past, not your keys, not your coins. That applies to not just leaving them on an exchange, but if you're lending out your Bitcoin to try and get yield or trying to get returns, you are putting yourself at great risk. And I think people understate how much risk they're putting themselves by lending out to try and get yield and trying to get returns on their Bitcoin. Many people think you're giving the Bitcoin and they have to give it back with the additional yield. But in cases like this, when companies go bankrupt or malicious actors, they quite literally will take your Bitcoin and you get nothing in return. Anything else you guys want to add?
No, I mean, you nailed it. This is perfect example of not your keys, not your coin. Exchanges, like even places like Cash App, are an important on-ramp for Bitcoin, but you have to take custody of your own Bitcoin. Otherwise, you're not actually using Bitcoin in the way that it was initially intended. It's the reality.
Hey, for the audience members who maybe are listening to Bitcoin Magazine news for the first time or are watching our show for the first time, what the hell do you mean by saying self-custody?
Great question. Thank you for asking. When we talk about Bitcoin, which is the soundest money that has ever existed, one of the primary aspects of it is being able to actually take full custody, to take possession of the asset, to take possession of your Bitcoin. When we talk about Bitcoin, if you are, in order to sign transactions that send Bitcoin, you have your private keys. Whoever holds those private keys, which are generally represented by 12 or 24 seed words, whoever has those 12 or 24 seed words has control of your Bitcoin. And when you buy Bitcoin on an exchange, you don't actually own that Bitcoin. All that you own is an IOU, an agreement between you and the exchange that when you ask for it, they will give you that Bitcoin back. But as we've seen from recent experiences like Celsius, like the company that Chris just mentioned, these things blow up. And at the end of the day, if you don't have those private keys, you are totally screwed. So when we talk about Bitcoin and self-custody, what we mean is, as you are able to, as you have learned enough about what it means to effectively and safely self-custody your own Bitcoin, you need to transfer that Bitcoin off of an exchange into your own possession. There are a lot of ways of doing this. People tend to use hot wallets for a smaller amount of Bitcoin, and they use what are called cold wallets for a larger amount of Bitcoin. But read up on it. There's incredible resources that are published by Bitcoin Magazine. BTC Sessions has incredible content out there around that. Swan Bitcoin has great content. Read up on what it means to self-custody your own Bitcoin, what wallets are, and then take possession of that Bitcoin so that you are truly financially sovereign.
I gotta have you define something else, because
Please.
Shout out Jesse, who love your fandom, love the fact that you're always watching. Yes, CashApp is KYC, as is Strike, as is Coinbase.
Yes.
What is KYC? Why are Bitcoiners caring about this 3-letter monstrosity?
Again, another great question. KYC stands for Know Your Customer. There are many laws around the world, and specifically in the US, that require financial entities to track a ton of information about the people that are using those systems. This is presented to us as, oh, we need to get your social security number and your address and, your waist size and your birthday and all this other shit to prevent terrorism. There's the constant threat of fear, of terrorism, of money laundering, all this bullshit. That is all, in fact, bullshit. These systems are in place not to prevent crimes. They are in place to allow the government and centralized entities to control what you do with your money. That is increasingly important to them, because as we enter this hyperinflationary global environment, the main levers that they have to control are how people interact with their finances and with their financial freedom. So these systems are terrible when we say KYC AML, because they centralize this information. When you submit your social security number, your birthday, your bank account information, all that shit to a third party, it creates what's called a honeypot. People are trying constantly to hack those entities in order to gain that treasure trove of information, which puts you and every American, every person who is submitting this information at significant risk. So systems that demand this are not great. Ideally, you're able to acquire Bitcoin in a no KYC method. You should be able to, ideally go to a Bitcoin meetup and pay someone in cash if you want to. The reality is that's difficult for most people to do. And so when we talk about these systems, ideally you're using non-KYC systems, but you often have to use KYC systems in order to get access to your Bitcoin.
Thank you, Professor P, for those excellent definitions. You passed today's pop quiz. Moving on, though, to Elon Musk. He has announced that he has informed bankers that he intends to close the Twitter deal by Friday, October 28th. P, do you want to make another bet?
Fuck yes. Give me those stats.
I mean, let me just ask you this. Do you actually think Elon Musk is going to close the Twitter deal, and will he be the new owner of Twitter? Come Friday.
I mean, it seems like he has to, right? What other tricks can he pull out of his hat?
It's either that or go to court. Like, legitimately get this dragged out in the court of law.
Yeah, I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to buy it, because now his ego, his brand is all tied up in it. If he doesn't do this, if he doesn't crush Twitter employees, the 75% that he's threatened he's going to fire, then it's going to be a black mark in his own head. And so he's got to do it.
Do we do our standard bet?
What is the standard bet?
No. A discrete law contract for 69,420 sats.
Ooh.
We've got a couple outstanding ones that we got.
Did you ever set that one up, by the way?
No.
We got to.
I think P already lost it.
I rugged you. I don't even remember what the bet was.
I get to write it on my terms then. You actually just send me 420 sats. I think that was the deal.
Now, you know what? Let's keep these small so we can just bang them out. 69 sats. Let's go. It happens on Friday. You guys are taking the opposite position?
Yeah. I think Elon Musk will pull some. I do not think Elon Musk on Friday will be the owner of Twitter.
I'm going to sit out. I just want to see you guys duke this out. I already got a bet with
All right,
me,
for 69 sats. Let's
right,
do 420 sats.
420 sats, even better. You heard it here first, people.
Should we talk about the letter?
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. So Elon Musk made an offer to buy Twitter. Then there were legal issues, which is what we were just referencing. And he then said he wasn't going to buy it because the Twitter bots and for a number of other reasons were bullshit. He said that basically it was misrepresented in the documents, in the letter of intent or whatever it is that he was given. Now, he's absolutely right. Bots on Twitter are fucking crazy and I do not understand it. Nobody does. However, he recently put out a series of tweets saying that he was going to immediately fire 75% of Twitter employees when he owned the company. And in the most hilarious woke response, Twitter employees have signed a letter that they sent a letter to Elon Musk that the current, executive team and the board of directors saying a number of crazy things and specifically demanding that Elon not fire anybody and that he explicitly commit to preserve remote work. And it's hilarious because he's already said he's going to fire 75% of people. So really the threat is either you agree to these demands or we're leaving, which is exactly the outcome that he seems to want.
I'm going to tell you exactly what Elon Musk said when he received this letter to the people in the room. We do not negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. 100%.
I mean, like, if you want a good laugh, go read this letter because it's just like, it has the tone of someone who was crying while they wrote this, trying to make you feel like the author was crying while they wrote this. But if you've ever been in a situation where one party is crying and it makes you feel uncomfortable because they're crying, like that's what it was like reading it.
Oh, I had a slightly different reaction. I thought it is as if this group of people, first of all, I'm not aware how many people actually signed this document.
Call them what they are. They are striking terror and fear in people. They are terrorists.
Jesus. No, they are not. They're trying to do what they believe to be best for themselves and, more power to them. It's embarrassing for them and everyone involved, but whatever. They're just, it's an empty threat. The funny thing to me though, is that I actually read this as, it's as if they're holding all the cards. They're like, we're going to do fucked up shit. He's already said he wants to fire 75% of people. So it's like, the fuck are you doing? You're just putting a target on your back. And basically you're saying like, if you don't do the thing that we want, which is ridiculous, we'll give you exactly what you want. So think about that, motherfucker.
I think the funniest thing, the footnote to it all, was that Elon apparently was talking to Twitter employees, the executive staff and all this in like a company-wide meeting because I guess they're brokering the deal. And he told Twitter employees they can work from home as long as they don't work for Twitter. So, I think that was the funniest thing of it all. Like, you can definitely work from home. It's just not going to be for Twitter anymore. I will caveat and say that it's not just him singling out Twitter and being like, oh, I'm going to pick on you guys. He has already said this for Tesla and SpaceX. Obviously, they are very different companies. They're about manufacturing and doing things. Not that Twitter's not about doing things, but they're an internet-based company that, most companies would say they can work abroad, but he believes that working in person yields better productivity. With him being the owner or the largest shareholder, when this deal goes through, he can set whatever demands he wants, and I think that's his prerogative.
How long?
I also will say, I'm a huge fan of remote work as somebody who is working remotely right now. So that
shout out DB. Thank you very much for letting us live our wildest fantasies and continue to work from home, and so I can live in my mother's basement.
Although, now having said that, I did move to Nashville, our headquarters. So it's like this weird, I'm in Nashville working remotely also in
I did go into the office for 2 weeks, as everyone remembers. And let me tell you, P legitimately, he got like an allergic reaction stepping foot into the office. So
no, that's not true at all. I love the office. Problem is I got this amazing studio here. So what else am I going to do? But we got other stories to cover.
Let's hit them. Chris, let's go to the other side of the pond.
Yes. Going across the pond. So UK is welcoming Bitcoin and crypto. What do I mean by this? UK lawmakers have voted to recognize Bitcoin and crypto as regulated financial instruments. What does that mean? That basically means that they are like, hey, we're welcoming it with open arms. But, capital gains tax, we want that. Hey, reporting your crypto to us, yeah, we want that. actually leaving it on exchange, that's probably even better for us if we want to confiscate it. So while they're saying they're welcoming of Bitcoin and crypto, really what they want is more control. They want more tax dollars. The UK, like the US, things are not looking good there, and their stock market's down. The gas prices, energy prices are going up. I'm assuming with all of that, their tax receipts are going to be down this year. So they're looking for more ways to get more. What's the Uncle Sam equivalent in the UK? Is it the Queen or now the King? But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I want to just say this one thing because it kind of like popped into my head when you were describing how all the issues we're dealing with in America, like the UK as well, is dealing with. We like to blame Joe Biden for a lot of our problems. Joe Biden has nothing to do with why the UK gas prices are going up. And no, I'm not blaming Putin. I'm just blaming like poor central planning and poor government officials across the board, which is honestly, it sounds so crazy, but it is probably the most accurate sentiment as to why our entire society is slowly crumbling. I do have a question though, and Chris, I hope you have the answer to this. When we say that the UK is now going to recognize and Bitcoin and crypto as regulated financial instruments, is that different in any real way from how Bitcoin and crypto is viewed in the States right now, given the fact that I got to pay my taxes on it, I'm supposed to report on it, and like it's viewed as a legitimate financial instrument in the eyes of the government?
Yeah, so yes and no. So right now, I mean, obviously, Gary Gensler's come out and said Bitcoin is a commodity. Obviously, it has, there's taxes on it. If you sell it at all, you have to pay certain types of taxes. But I guess in the US, there's a lot of like legal gray area of like, oh, what are stable coins? What are these cryptos? Are they like unregistered securities? They're kind of just getting rid of that. And they're saying, hey, we're welcoming it all, but we're giving you a breakdown of what regulations and rules we have where the US has been morally or like gray on the area. So I guess they've come out and said that they're giving more guidance, but basically they want more tax dollars is the way I see this. And they also want more KYC and AML laws to push through with all that.
Yeah. I mean, look, Rishi, I got some choice words for you if I ever get the chance to meet you, man. You're not helping my case to keep living in my parents' basement, to say the least. But moving on, if you're going to take a shot at the king, you best make sure the king ain't walking afterwards. What do I mean? Well, the shorts got liquidated once again. Bitcoin liquidates over $1 billion in short positions at Bitcoin as Bitcoin price hits a 6-week high. LOL. Like, oh my God, I'm laughing at all you bozos. Bitcoin price, Tino, move your thing. Bitcoin price may still bottom in November, but warns traders as Bitcoin liquidates $1 billion. As TLDR, if you had a short position on Bitcoin because you're trading it, I hope you got absolutely demolished and wrecked. If you didn't and still have a short position, your time is coming very soon, my friend. And if you are like me and you are still long as hell, not levered long. We don't like leverage on this show, but also nothing is financial advice here. Do your own due diligence. Please, for the love of God, do not listen to a man who lives in his mother's basement. But yeah. Bye.
All right.
DCA. Moving on.
Our next story is another example of mainstream media twisting a story to drive their own narrative. Forbes had a headline yesterday. I can't stop laughing as I'm reading this. The headline was, oh God, I got to call it up because I do not want to fuck this up. It's so perfect. The headline is "Billionaire No More. Kanye West's anti-Semitism obliterates his net worth as Adidas cuts ties." Now, in order for this headline to be reasonable, they had to contort themselves, and by they I mean the writers at Forbes, into so many positions. What they're actually doing is their logic is, if Kanye had still had his Adidas contract in X number of years into the future, it would have been worth over $1 billion. So the fact that Adidas has dropped him now because of his comments is the same thing as if he was a billionaire right now and he lost all his money. Essentially, this headline is totally bullshit and it's clickbait, and they're doing it because they're trying to drive people towards their website. Remember, any news outlet, including this one, Their objective is to bring in people so that they can make revenue from ads. Some are better than others. I would argue Bitcoin Magazine is fucking fantastic because our main goal is actually to bring Bitcoin to as many people as possible, as rapidly as possible per unit time. But do not forget that the average media company is just there to steal your attention and suck your soul out through your nipples. That's how they do it.
Yeah, I have nothing to add there. I agree.
Yeah.
I would like to point out two things on the Kanye West front. While he is now being touted as this non-billionaire billionaire, Brett Favre, who stole PPP money from the state of Mississippi, still continues to have all of his sponsorships. Now, I'm not saying everyone's racist, but I'm saying all of you fuckers are racist. Also, Kanye West had 2 shows in 2023 canceled. Kanye West, this message is for you. You have an open invitation to come attend, speak to, and perform at B23. We will not rug pull you on that. On to our final story, but before we do that, I do want to remind everyone that tickets for Bitcoin 2023 are available. We are going back to Miami, May 18th to the 20th. Use promo code BMLive to get 10% off. Please do it for the children. Chris, talk to us about meth.
So not methamphetamines. The abbreviation meth, METH. Well, Ethereum. I'll just come out and say it. Ethereum. I don't know why I spelled that out. Ethereum has shot themselves in the head. What did they do? So we talked about with the merge that they were going through OFAC compliant blocks, or that many of the validators were going to go over it with being the largest blocks in the space. It happened this morning. 100 out of 100 OFAC compliant blocks in a row have occurred through Ethereum Validators. What does this mean? So this means that any country that is sanctioned, like Q's country of Iran, is no longer allowed to transact on the Ethereum network. Or I guess there can be rogue validators from here and there. This morning, there was actually 99 of 100 were OFAC compliant, and one of them was not. But as the merge occurred, it was going to cause centralization. And due to that, it can restrict people from transacting on Ethereum. This is not just common just with the merge that occurred recently. I mean, there's countless hacks that have occurred on Ethereum that they have rolled back, or they've changed or hard forked, or forced people to upgrade their software in order to be in compliance with the new chain or the longest chain. So it is very, very crazy. And they were trying to go for ultrasound money. They were trying to do supercomputer narratives. Now it's more just of a censoring arm of JP Morgan, basically. I don't know. Anything else you guys want to add?
I just got to say, I'm so impressed that you kept a straight face during that whole time, man.
I went too far with the math. Ethereum. I just stuck with that.
Look,
No, I don't think you went far enough. You did not go far enough. But rest assured, my friends, my delicate flowers, in just a moment, we will be back with the one, the only Marshall Long. And we're going to get into all of it. We're going to talk about freebasing meth and everything else. Reminder, you can buy tickets to Bitcoin 2023 using code BMLive. We do not sell meth on our website, and you'll save 10%. You also can get the most recent edition of the print magazine, the censorship-resistant issue. Reminder, that magazine is about to go out of print, and then the Orange Party issue will be out, which is going to be even better. They get better every time. It's the way that works. Q will be banned from doing renditions, readings, auditory renditions of the magazine, because every time he does it, everybody dies a little bit inside. That's
fake news, actually. What's going to happen is the dramatic readings will return once we get the Orange Party edition.
We'll talk about this later at home. Stay tuned. We're going to roll the commercial, then we'll be back.
Thank you for sticking through those commercial breaks. And I am excited to introduce our guest for today. He is none other than international influencer, superstar, OG Bitcoiner from the class of 2010, here to regale us with tales of both fact and fiction. Marshall Long, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm assuming you all got your World Economic Forum gas mask in the mail?
So I did not. I've been a little too outspoken against the WEF that the postcard they sent was you will get coal in the mail shortly. Once we have enough coal.
Mine came with the cricket protein as well. I don't know if you got that add-on or...
No, see, I actually specifically said do not send me the cricket meat. So
That's your loss, man.
I know.
It's your loss.
I kind of fucked up. I asked for shrimp meat though.
Yeah, I'm so glad you reminded me, Marshall. I've been remiss. I have, as an avid supporter of the WEF, I have not been wearing my mask, but seeing you and yours reminded me to get mine. So I will be putting it on in a second. I also did specifically request the protein slurry enema option. So I'm actually doing that right now as we speak. And I can feel the invigorating, nutrients flowing through my body.
I'm glad you went with the enema for efficiency's sake,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to put my mask on too, just to be in support, because here we're all about, supporting each other and
inclusion,
inclusion, supporting the narrative, all that stuff. So,
my God, you're looking good. So I see you got the streamlined version, all to the efficiency. The streamlined fit looks great. You look good.
Yeah. I'm sure you can hear me just as clearly as before.
Absolutely.
I hope that you feel left out, Q, and you feel the shame you're supposed to feel right now.
I want to, for anyone listening only, what is happening right now on the screen is I have both Marshall Long, our guest for today, and P openly admitting that they are WEF moles and are preparing for the gas that the WEF is going to disperse onto all of us, and they are wearing their gas masks in preparation of this moment.
I'm not quite sure what you're thinking, Q. Listen, if there's one
or
thing
maybe
I
your
know,
farts are just that bad.
Listen,
one or the other.
One thing I know, Janet Yellen, Gary Gensler, and Jay Powell know what's best for me. Okay, that's what I know.
Yeah, that's fair.
Hey man, I'm happy for you. In this country, you have the right to choose, and you can make that choice and determination. I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you, and I support you on this journey.
How the hell's it going, boys?
Amazing. My friend, let's get into who you are and why you're fucking amazing. You have been in the space for a million years, since what, 2012, 2013, even earlier maybe?
Yeah, so I started mining late 2010, November 2010. So coming up on my anniversary, as they say.
Oh, shit. Not only have you been in the mining space for almost 12 years, it sounds like, but you are also, you've been a major player in the space. You've been, you were part of the block size wars. You more recently were one of the founders of PlebNet, which is a group that is focused on education and exploring what is possible in the Lightning Network. You are an incredible memer and a close personal friend. What else? What did I miss?
You missed that I'm also an international icon when it comes to the influencer game. I don't know if you noticed, kind of a big deal. Yeah.
We are in the presence of truly elite influencer talent right now, P.
Can you define for the audience what that means? What do you mean when you say that exactly?
Listen, when you're a man of my influence and stature and you post a simple tweet with a video that has nothing to do with you or anybody you know, and it gets 500,000 likes, not a big deal, and then Elon likes it. That's just kind of my day to day,
One of the things I really appreciate about you is how humble you are, Marshall.
Yeah, I randomly just tweeted some video and it popped off a couple days ago as well.
To be clear, this is not a video that you neither are in nor took. You just posted it.
I was just like, this is cool. And it just took off. Internet's a weird place, man.
For you listening at home, you can do it too. You can be an international influencer like Marshall.
Good luck. Good luck. Both of us have been trying for years, Q. We fail every day. But we're here. We're trying hard. We're going to make it.
So
That's the mistake you make. You try, P. See, if I don't try, then I didn't fail.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But let's dive into it. What are we here to talk about other than, boofing cricket protein and the WEF agenda?
hey, look, I'm here to talk about whatever you kind, gentle lads would like to discuss. I'm an open book. All right, I've been through it all. And today's just another day in mining paradise, you know?
Tell us more about that. I mean, there have been a lot of liquidations in the mining space lately. The hash rate is continuing to scream up even as the USD price of Bitcoin continues to crab walk sideways as it has for the last 12 months. What's it like on the ground being a miner and being in these rooms with a lot of people who are suffering during this period?
So this feels a lot like 2013 into 14 and 15. Those I was fortunate enough to make my mistakes those early days. And then when the price runs up, you obviously have people that have overbuilt and that are frankly fiat maximalists in disguise getting absolutely rinsed. And I'm fucking here for it, boys. I'm here for it.
And when you say, just to dig into that a little bit more, when you say like fiat maximalists in disguise, what you're talking about is basically people over leveraging in order to purchase too many miners during the bull market. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, as the price goes down, they sort of go underwater and then they have to liquidate their assets in order to stay solvent. Is that like sort of fuck that up?
So the normal kind of like process, the way that things kind of go is when the price runs, people get all excited and they'll build and buy on the way to the top. Problem is the tops are really short. And mining is two things more than anything else. It's an OPEX exercise, getting your OPEX as low as possible, and it's a timing exercise. So the people that are bad at both are the people who are getting absolutely smoked. And so people who aren't doing their proper due diligence or hiring the right people to help them with power negotiations or going into a new power market like Texas and don't understand that you're a slave to the power market if you do it wrong. These are kind of things that we were fortunate enough to learn in 2013 and 14, where you got to time the market right, and it's sometimes better to build slower and smarter than it is to try to catch the top.
Yeah, and let's dig into that a little bit more. You kind of alluded to these different strategies that miners who are being paid by the network to secure the Bitcoin blockchain can take during these various periods, right? Because we have the 4-year halving cycle, and during the bear markets, as I understand it, the price of the hardware, the OPEX, as you put it, and the installations that you have to put in place, the not the power grids, but the actual systems that support those miners. During the bear markets, those tend to be less expensive, and then as everybody gets excited during the bull markets, those contracts, that infrastructure, certainly the ASICs themselves, go up in price. And so it's kind of, when you say timing the market, it's trying to figure out when you should be buying hardware maybe versus buying power contracts and the related things. What are some of the broad strategies that people take, and how have those strategies changed since over the bear markets that you've been through?
Yeah, this time is interesting. So most of the power in the States is you can kind of track with the price of natural gas. And this is the first time we've had a bear market and a war at the same time. And so the price of gas went ballistic this summer and also in the spring of this year. And so the price of power went crazy. So there were people with tons of gear sitting on the sidelines who then were forced with the question, do they try to sell the hardware and take a loss? Do they try to lock in a power contract at the peak of the natural gas and plug the machines in and start mining them? Or do they just kind of sit on their hands and wait? So all during this time, also the S&P is getting smoked. So all the public guys are also getting squeezed on the share price. It's really hard to get money now in the public side. And so these multiple facets of the bear market, not just in Bitcoin, but globally, really squeeze people to the people who timed it and built it right. There's ways to overbuild your infrastructure, which is a big no-no. There are ways to just buy what's readily available, which is a big no-no. And you're starting to pay the price. I'll quote Adam Beck. He told me once that the best Bitcoin miners are the ones who can build the cheapest chicken shack data center. And that's very true. It's always been true. And so the more that people build out, they now have overhead, employees, insurance, benefits, all these kinds of things. That coupled with a lack of hedging products on a larger scale, a very liquid product for hedging your strategy just isn't there. And so people are getting smoked.
I want to ask a very direct question on this. And this is not because I am taking notes to do this on my own secretly. But like,
You're going to fail.
genuinely, if there have been a lot of new entrants into the Bitcoin space, especially since 2020. There are a lot of people who want to build and contribute, but are trying to figure out how. What are just like some quick tips for someone who wants to have a scaled out mining operation? Not just like a small at home, but not like an industrial, like they want to have an operation, but they want to start it now. What would be some advice?
And
I
just
would
to be
say-
clear, are you asking for a friend, Q?
Yes, my friend who just so happened to conveniently live in his mother's basement in a state that has very, very high energy costs.
Sure. So number one move is what I would say. I can tell you what a lot of people do that is pretty effective is don't use what I would call prosumer level mining as a way to necessarily make additional money. So I can tell you what I recently did. I bought an office building it's a small office building, but also had a data center attached to it. Gutted it, sold all the scrap, and then there just happened to be a megawatt of power there. We're not going to use that to run like TVs and projectors, so let's just plug some machines in, do it right, don't turn the AC on, and now you can use that as a tax advantaged way to depreciate your assets over the first year. You can use that to help, if you can run it profitably, you can use it to pay your property tax. You can use it to, help subsidize the operation of another business, if that makes sense. So now this office is effectively owned outright. It is a little bit more than break even. And I was able to take a loss on the business this year to reduce my tax burden because I was able to accelerate the depreciation schedule of the machines. So there are other ancillary reasons why you might mine as an attachment to a normal business.
This is super helpful. My friend now has some office buildings to go check out.
I also love that, Marshall, you're like, look, I just brought like just a tiny office building with like a data center attached. Like, no MBD, who hasn't?
It's actually very small. I was just driving down the road and I glimpsed it and I was like, oh, okay, let's see. It said data center for auction, and it's just a tiny little rinky-dink place that was owned previously by a Bitcoin miner who did shit wrong in 2017 and got absolutely smoked because they were running the air conditioners to try to cool the machines and just doing things wrong. So if you started as a pleb at home, you know what not to do already. You're not going to crank your AC all the time. You're going to put it in the garage and vent the heat out. You already know what to do. Just do it a little bit more.
I love it. That's going to be the pull quote. You already know what to do. Just do it a little bit more.
I want to stay on mining, but I want to bring the WEF into the equation. For a lot of different reasons that may be true and may not be true, the idea and concept of Bitcoin mining seems to be one of the most triggering things for climate activists, for shitcoiners, for anyone who is just against Bitcoin. And in particular, both the energy usage and just proof of work mining in particular has been put on this sort of like, fuck, I can't think of the word when you're on trial, but it's like on this
On the
trial.
stand.
Thank you. It's been put on the stand. And I'd love just your thoughts from conversations around proof of work from the early days before Mt. Gox. Like what were the rationales, justifications for proof of work? And if someone was discussing proof of stake, how much did you bully them into eventually turning them into the supervillain known as Vitalik Buterin?
So early days, anybody that says they knew Bitcoin was going to be a huge major hit's a fucking liar. When I first started mining Bitcoin, I was like, oh, I could pay off my CPUs and my GPUs by mining this nerd money. That's awesome. I didn't know anything about economics or financial inclusion or any of the good stuff that we now know and love about Bitcoin. So early days, it was that. As far as POS, people only used it as like a way to trade shitcoins. So like early days on, Gox or BTCE or any of these other exchanges, there was like, NXT was like one of the first POS coins. And they were just like a thing to try to arb Bitcoin against. It wasn't anything outside of that. And then papers started coming out where people were like, well, it's less secure, blah, blah, blah. And then Vitalik didn't get his way and get his code pushed through Bitcoin, which is a whole nother can of worms. And here we are today. So now that the golden boy has relinquished the proof of work dragon, we find ourselves where they tried to get us on ESG. That failed miserably because most miners actually use a huge amount of green power. BlackRock tried to put all these ESG mandates out, and so all the other woke capitalists were like, oh, we got to follow this ESG score shit. And then that didn't work. And so then, you got the war, so BlackRock backpedals on their ESG. So everybody else backpedals on their ESG. And now it's, Bitcoin mining is the devil because look at Ethereum, look what they did. Why can't you do it? And the general answer is because we're not fucking dumb. I mean, there's not much else to say about it,
Yeah, it is. It's pretty infuriating for me, at least. Like I keep expecting to kind of become desensitized to the lies and the blatant misrepresentation of reality and the facts in order to push, the bags of a very specific group of people, which is to say people pushing ESG and anti-Bitcoin narratives. But it just incenses me every fucking time.
Well, almost every Bitcoiner I know, they don't have a problem with ESG or green. We like to go outside. We like to breathe fresh air. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with treating people nice and like the governance part of like running a company and not being a crap boss. All that stuff's good. But when you try to leverage it to coerce people to invest in things that you want them to invest into,
Exactly.
That's the fucking problem. And so, nobody's going to say like, oh yeah, I would prefer to, melt the ice caps and mine Bitcoin. Everybody would probably prefer to like be warm in the winter. And, there's no reason we can't do everything and not be complete pieces of shit about it. So the incentives of the fiat woke nation are completely contorting their messaging. And it's just sloppy at this point. The White House report was a fucking joke. It was just like, they didn't even try. Nick Carter, they even interviewed Nick Carter and didn't use any of his stuff. He just did a great podcast with Peter and was pretty interested to hear how like they interviewed also many other Bitcoin people and didn't use anybody's info. So it's very clearly, I'm not even trying to cover it up now. It's a clear targeted attack that really doesn't have any scientific foundation. And the best part is, as it starts getting cold in Europe, this is the part where this is the part of the story where it's fuck around and find out type situation. So
yeah, it's maddening. It's as you say, it doesn't have any basis in actual reality. The specific talking points are so divorced from what's actually going on, and they're so they're so insane. I feel like there is a trap that is very difficult for me, at least, to not fall into, right? Which is when people are like, oh, Bitcoin uses, 0.5% or whatever the fuck it is of the world's energy. It's really hard for me to not debate on that claim, to be like, do you run Christmas lights? Do you dry your own clothes in a dryer? Do you leave your lights on? Do you drive a car? Well, all these things use way more fucking energy than Bitcoin does just in the United States. But that's actually the wrong frame. Like if you, it's like if you get down in the mud, you've already lost. The real frame is like, you should not be able, if somebody is paying for electricity, if they're paying for power, or if they're generating it themselves from a product that is considered waste from some other industry, you should be able to do whatever the fuck you want with that electricity. And we give that right to every person in America when they buy power from the meter. But for some fucking reason with Bitcoin, we try to moralize it. And it's because moralization of stuff, people love to get so bent out of shape about issues that have a moral bent, even when it's totally wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, if you kind of zoom out and look at the rest of the globe, it's a lot easier to see how none of this actually. Oh, that's good. I've heard Pornhub uses 8x the energy of Bitcoin miners. I'd buy it. I'd definitely buy that. The rest of the world doesn't have issues like this. I recently went to Africa and started looking at ways that mining can help local communities and stuff like that. And the reality is the Western world's problems are not Africa's problems. If the whole global financial sector melts down and Russia bombs the US or whatever, Africa is just going to keep doing its thing and will barely skip a beat. So when people start talking about this, I'll bring up that story about how people in Africa don't use that much power because it's too expensive, not because they don't necessarily have access to it. It's just because it's a catch-22 cycle where the generators are only selling power for 4 to 5 hours a day because people only turn their lights on and charge their cell phones. Because of that, they've got to charge them 50, 60 cents a kilowatt hour. Because it's so high, the community doesn't use enough. And so it's like this circle of just terrible incentives. And mining can go in and really kind of tweak those incentives back because there's no central grid in Africa. So you can't sell your power at any time as a generator. But if you attach a mining thing to it, now people are starting to get cheaper, more reliable power. And instead of cooking food with paraffin or cooking food with kerosene, which is like a really dangerous fucking thing to do, the amount of people who like get caught on fire for cooking with kerosene, or kids who have lung problems from being around, kerosene lamps and paraffin fires, it's really high. And so now these people who are attached to mini grids that are mining are seeing their power bills reduced greatly, and now are starting to cook with hot plates, electric hot plates, and stuff like this. Mining is directly impacting people's quality of life with no filter. Like, it's just straight incentive. Everybody makes money. The community saves money. Not many people are going to say, oh, that's bad, because most of the power is fucking hydro anyway. So there you go. When you tell that story, people shut up pretty quick. So
this is a very important and powerful conversation, but I need to put a pin in it because this just got sent to me on Twitter, and this might be the funniest situation, and then there's a question to follow. So all these climate activists, P, that you and I have been talking about, where they go into these museums and throw shit onto paintings and whatnot. It turns out they just broke
and super glue their hands to the walls.
And super glue their hands, whatever.
That's key.
And yes, those activists. Turns out another group of climate activists have broken into BlackRock headquarters and are protesting inside of BlackRock. And the question I have for the two of you, whose side are you on right now? BlackRock's or the climate activists?
Fuck! God damn it!
Q asking the hard-hitting questions here today, folks.
Marshall, you first, please.
I don't know who I'm supposed to root for here because they're both morons.
Listen, man, I'm on my team, okay? And that's the best part about Bitcoin is I don't have to choose sides. I'm gonna do what I want, and the minute somebody tells me I can't, they're gonna have to come and enforce that policy. Good luck. I'm in Texas. I have basically a third world country's munition stockpile at my home. Assuming you get through that hailstorm of bullet fire, then I'll just move somewhere else and mine where people actually need that stuff, right?
I love how you just very expertly dodged the answer to that question. The question was, do you side with the climate activists who are super gluing their genitals to the side of the BlackRock building? Or do you side with BlackRock, given that both of them are pieces of shit? I'm going to go with neither. Firebomb the whole thing, burn it all to the ground. We're good to go.
Burn it all down. We'll build it back the right way.
That's right.
Hell
right.
yeah.
So one of the things that I just jumping off of that, well, actually first, Q, do you feel like you got your very reasonable question answered?
It absolutely was. Marshall's on the side of BlackRock and UP are on the side of climate activists.
That is correct.
Fucking damn it. All right.
Listen, I'm going where the money's at. All right. Look at the clothes that these activists are wearing. Come on. I'm trying to go with the dudes with the Oxford shoes, the tight 3-piece button up. All right. The Gucci shades. All right. Come on. If I got to pick a side, I might as well be looking good. Right?
Fair enough. That's a compelling argument. You referenced something that I think is interesting here, which is, the idea that people have to come in and force, you get to choose whatever you want to do. And then if anybody wants to do something different, that's fine. But if they want to get you to do something different, then they have to force you to do it. And I think that there is another aspect to this, which is one of the things that is so exciting to me about the Bitcoin network and the technology behind it, which is the alignment of incentives. We see again and again that you can do whatever you want, but the economics of the Bitcoin network and the way that it operates reward or discourage certain behaviors based on what the Bitcoin network operators want, ideally what is best for the network. And I think we saw that happen in a very explicit way with the, what is called the block size wars, right? Which you had a super interesting experience of and were sort of on the ground interacting with. And I'd love to talk more about that. What was your experience during that period? What happened? And what have we as a community learned through that? And what have you learned as a miner in that process? Let's start with what happened, and then we can go from there.
Sure. So this was a time when fees were getting very high. At the same time, the price had started to run up. And through a series of meetings and questions, it was very clear that people weren't willing to just change the consensus mechanism of Bitcoin by changing the block size limit from a 1 to a 2 megabyte. So myself, Gavin Andreessen, and a guy named Jonathan Tumum started a project called Bitcoin Classic. Bitcoin Classic was literally the same exact code base, except the 1 of the block size changed to a 2. That started a whole shit show of what is now known as the block size wars. As far as reasons why, as a miner, it is in my best interest to try to encourage as much on-chain activity. Therefore, I can make more Bitcoin from transaction fees. However, it is a fine line between that and it being not good for the network. So if the block size goes too high, then there can be big issues with that. So like a project called Bitcoin XT came out that wanted to do, that was with Mike Hearn, wanted to do 8 megabytes. There's all kinds of interesting arguments about how the network pros and cons with different block sizes. But we started this conversation and it was an interesting learning experience for me. Timing as well was terrible on my part. I had just left an exchange called Cripsy at the time where the CEO stole all the money and ran away. And so I quit, I guess, in September, I think, and he stole everything in December. And then we started Classic in January. And so that gave all kinds of people, it was a great way to suicide my own reputation. I will say that. Learned a lot of how the Bitcoin community is a immunity system. People think Bitcoin's toxic now. Y'all got no fucking idea. People come to my house, bothering my wife at her job, all kinds of craziness. Like I having to pull guns on people because they wouldn't leave, like all kinds of weird stuff. But it's interesting that the ferocity of the Bitcoin network from an inside actor was so, and I still talk to a lot of people who were against only within the past year.
Oh no, Marshall, I think we're losing you. Q, can you hear Marshall all right?
I hear you.
Okay. Let's keep going. It sounds like you guys can hear each other okay? Okay. You can hear me. Q's crapping out, but you can hear me all right. Let's keep going. All right. Marshall, can you try setting your video connection a little bit lower? So if you click on the little gear, sorry for the interruption, folks, and then lower the quality of the video, and then we'll dive back in because this is fascinating. All right. Marshall has jumped out. Q's internet is garbage. We're talking about
I got to jump in. This is not my fault, by the way. This is their internet problems.
I blame you. I blame you, producer Chris. But while we wait for Marshall to be able to jump back in, oh, he's working on it right now. He's back.
Looks like we're good.
All right. I think we're back.
Excellent.
All right, let's keep going.
Okay. Everything good? We good here? Okay. So, it's about changing the box size, really. What I've only recently come to realize after reflecting upon it and talking to many people is it was about setting a precedent of changing the consensus. And the more and more you do that, the less and less viable your product becomes. You take away the hardness that is Bitcoin. You take away one of the core tenets of Bitcoin, meaning that, and this is why you're a bad fiduciary if you mine Bitcoin or you mine Ethereum with other people's money, or you stake Ethereum with other people's money, because you have a track record of consensus changes. You have a track record of messing with the network. You have a track record of forking, which means you're a bad fiduciary in your responsibility if you participate in that, if that makes sense. Therefore, that's kind of only recently come to like the real reason why it was so bifurcating. And some people disagree with that. And so that spawned off Bitcoin Cash, which then spawned off Bitcoin SV. So, and I spent a significant amount of my career fighting Lightning. I thought it was too complex. Segregated witness was too complex, was never going to happen. The reality is they are complex. They're really insane engineering obstacles to overcome. But as Bitcoin gets older and older, it should become harder and harder to change. It should become harder and harder to co-opt. And that's what I learned starting Bitcoin Classic. So I was wrong. Everybody else that was on the other side was right.
One of the things that I have come to really appreciate about you, Marshall, which is really unusual in the space, is that you're able to talk about these things in a really candid way and acknowledge the things that the community has learned, that you have learned, and then like grow together. And I initially, like you and I became really good friends because of our experience starting PlebNet, right? Like you were someone who was as excited as I was, like, let's fucking go. Like, let's figure out, can we break this thing? Like, how does it work? Like, how do we figure out the economic incentives? How do we create systems that allow us to profit as routing nodes? And to be honest, like I didn't even understand the depth of the history that you had in the space until later, like, you know, after that. And I just want to give you like really mad props for being able to talk about this stuff in such a candid way and acknowledge those things, because Very, very few people can. Very few people are able to do that. So,
well, that's one of the things I learned, man. After Classic kind of blew up, right on the heels of Cripsy blowing up, and the people who knew me really well knew I didn't have any like ill intent or I didn't do anything wrong. It's just like the approach was not right. I tried to just kind of like go away from Bitcoin for a little bit. So I started an esports company and kind of just was mining and left everything kind of alone. That was the wrong thing to do. It allows people to kind of like put words in your mouth because you're not there to rebut. It allows people to kind of craft stories and narratives that aren't true. And so had I just said, hey guys, I kind of fucked up and this isn't the right way to do things, I probably wouldn't have had such a hard Bitcoin career. But you know, that's part of the open source community life. You know, the guys at Linux have similar stories, lots of infighting. That's the nature of a hardened system, and that's, you know, that's one of the reasons why Linux is the most widely used operating system on the planet.
I'll go further. I think that conflict, that open discussion, and the testing of the various strategies is actually essential. Actually, it's what you're saying here. That is an essential piece of why these systems are so robust. And I think being able to acknowledge that rather than like falling into the kind of standard groupthink all the time takes a lot of courage and is fucking awesome. So yeah, man.
Thank you, sir. I'm gonna sidebar real quick. Somebody said, why are so many people going to Africa? Like, you don't have to go there. There are many people that are local doing the stuff that you want to do, helping rural people already. Why not support the cause instead of being Superman yourself? So that's actually what is happening. So there's a company called Gridless Compute you should check out. Those are the guys that are actually doing it. I just went there to learn what they're doing, see if I could help in any way. Met up with some local people at a meetup, et cetera, et cetera. So that's actually what's happening. Just to clarify that point.
What is Gridless Compute? Let's talk more about
that. So I just recently got to know them. Some of their investors introduced me to them. So that's their business model. It was started by 3 Africans, one South Sudanese, one from Kenya, and the other person is from Ghana, I think. And that's what they're doing. The business model I described, where they're partnering with power generators, giving them hosting machines inside the turbine house in order to allow the generators to effectively sell power in exchange for Bitcoin. And because they're able to monetize otherwise unmonetizable assets, they are then dropping the power price for local communities. And then the local communities can stop cooking with paraffin, and local communities can start using more power because it's more affordable. And the best way to kind of like improve people's quality of life is just cheap and abundant power. And that's what Gridless Compute actually does. So yeah, if it sounded like I was the person doing this, absolutely not. I went there, learned about it. It's really cool. Just trying to help where I can.
Love it. So what are some of the other, go ahead, yeah.
Real quick, I want to throw this question out there because, Marshall, I think what you've done, especially in this conversation, is something that very few people are willing to do, which is be really honest with their past mistakes and like own it and say, hey, that was probably not the way to think this through. That was not the right course of action. Glad it didn't work out, and I'm glad we're on this next path. Are there other mistakes you have seen made in Bitcoin specifically? And I'm not saying that, oh, they worked on Bitcoin and then they went and created a shitcoin, but just Bitcoin products specifically that you think maybe looking back aren't as good or have not accomplished what they set out to accomplish when they were first released?
Oh yeah, there's tons of them, and almost all of them aren't from lack of like good intent or altruistic intentions or any of that. Almost all of them are because people underestimate the engineering obstacle that is building on top of Bitcoin. So like people that have started merge mine type projects, it's just really hard to get miners to mine your backwards compatible chain so you can leverage Bitcoin security. companies like
Can you define merge mine just for the
Sure.
audience?
So merge mining is technically where you have a separate chain, but your block header is reverse compatible with Bitcoin's block header. So when you find a nonce that works for Bitcoin, you can shove that into the block header of this other child chain and provide consensus for free effectively to this other chain. So that was one early days that tons of people were doing. And it's just hard because maintaining multiple nodes, especially for a shitcoin chain, just doesn't work, regardless if it's not that much of a lift for us to mine that chain. Every time your chain breaks, then I have to go and reconfigure my Bitcoin node to fix everything, which is just the opportunity cost of turning off your Bitcoin node as a miner is too high. It's like that's basically like table stakes for everything for this shitter coin. There is still a little bit that happens now. Also, people building on top of it, like I think there's a project called RGB, really cool ass project, but it's just like a huge monumental engineering lift to get done. And most of the projects I see in Bitcoin that have failed are because of that. The engineering is so crazy that it's just hard to get done in the amount of time that you have money in the bank to pay people to get it done. Recently, a friend of mine who invested in Lightning Labs, we are having a discussion about there are a few, he claims there are a few Bitcoin companies that are so important to Bitcoin that they must survive and they will always raise money even though they don't have a good business model. So Lightning Labs, some of the verticals of Blockstream, just because the brain trust that is in those companies and the amount of infrastructure that's being built on top of those systems from a company standpoint, business standpoint, don't actually make any sense. But from an ecosystem standpoint, they are a must. Therefore, those companies will be perpetually funded. So that's something that's quite unique to Bitcoin that I don't think any other chain has, is that investor mentality. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I buy that argument. And I definitely know many big funds that have that investment thesis as well. They see it as they invest in these underpinnings, and that makes their assets balloon in value because they've bolstered it from the bottom. So that's also something that's quite unique.
I want to shift slightly instead of continuing to bash on the negatives of everything, but the positives, because there are also a lot of, especially in this bear market, a lot of very interesting things being developed. I'd love just your thoughts on what technologies are most exciting to you right now that are being developed that you see will have the biggest potential over the course of this next decade.
I will just say that Fediment in general, and Obi Nwosu's company Fedi, building on top of Fediment, is something that is very unique, and I think building it on top of Lightning makes for a very compelling use case for the way I like to see and do and live my life. So I am not a subscriber to the don't trust, verify mentality. That's where a lot of arguments in the Bitcoin Classic days started from. I am a trust and verify type individual. Trusting is easier, trusting is faster, and in general, if you do your business right and you have aligned business incentives, trusting is fine. Where you get in trouble is where you don't verify and there's not a mechanism to punish bad actors. So P, you might disagree with this, but I think in fact you do agree with this. When we started Plebnet, we didn't care about anybody's privacy, we didn't care about anybody's identity. We wanted to open channels with each other because we knew each other and we trusted each other, and we just wanted to, play around with Lightning. That took an enormous amount of trust for me to have your IP address for your home and to not completely ass blast your network. That
This is true.
whole Plebnet was a whole exercise in trust and verify, and it helped a lot of people. I think Plebnet still has like 30-40% of the nodes running on Lightning with that model, trust and verify. And so what Fediment allows you to do is to build assets on top of Bitcoin and Lightning, where you start federated. It's a federated Chaumian mint, where let's say Plebnet could have their own, maybe we'll call it Pleb USD. Maybe it's a stable coin that rides on top of Bitcoin, whatever. But only the people inside of Plebnet use it and interact with each other, and it's all off chain. And you could see how far I've come, because in the classic days, I was like, everything needs to be on chain, and this is the right way to do it, so I can make more money as a miner. But you really hinder decentralization because of that. So what federated Chaumian mints allows you to do is have these siloed communities that all interoperate with just their own circle, and from that, those other federations can be cross-operable. So let's say Plebnet wanted to, maybe Umbrel has a community, for example, right? And we want Pleb USD to interoperate with Umbrel USD. The people who are the guardians in that federation can make their chain cross-compatible, and it all runs on Bitcoin, and it all runs on Lightning, and it's super mega ultra private, because when I make a private key to be in this federation, the private key gets sharded amongst all the guardians and amongst all the members. So even people in my own federation don't know who I am, don't know how much money I have, and they don't need to know. So it's like a better zero knowledge proof than anything that is being built today. So I'm most excited about Fedimint.
Do you have any opinions about the work that's been done with Taro and Lightning Labs?
So I am just now starting to dig in on Taro. Educate me, please.
Honestly, I'm still learning myself. I mean, I think it is.
It's like the next RGB, right?
Yeah, exactly. The reason I mentioned it is because you mentioned RBG recently, and I know that that I think it can do most of the things that RGB purports to be able to, or attempting to do. So I think of them as kind of not necessarily competitors, but analogous or parallel systems. And I think it can do more.
Yeah, that's the extent of my knowledge as well. So I know that everybody who is a big fan of Fedimint is also a huge fan of that. So that's actually on my list for next week, to start digging into the paper and seeing what they've got going on over there.
Got it. One of the things that you posted about relatively recently that I thought was super cool on Twitter was taking single boards out of, I think, was it S19s, and running them separately from each other to reduce noise, ventilation requirements, things like that. Am I representing that correctly?
Yeah. So this is a real interesting time in Bitcoin mining, where people are really passionate about mining at home. Damn the cost, for a litany of reasons. But that has inspired all kinds of people to have crazy contraptions. There's a guy who runs a company called Crypto Cloaks. They have all kinds of interesting add-ons for machines, where you could take the fans off because your wife's complaining they're too damn loud, and you can attach different fans, and they like sell 3D printed fan shrouds for different ASICs and machines. There are people who are stripping the hash boards out and dunking them in fluid, like in their bathtubs. The plebs are well and alive in the Bitcoin mining community, and it's fucking awesome.
Hell yeah. I mean, honestly, I think it's kind of similar to what we were doing with, you mentioned, Plebnet and the experimentation that we were willing to do on the Lightning Network, right? Where it's like, when the Lightning Network first came out, it was sort of this idea of hashtag reckless. Like, we don't give a shit. Like, we'll run anything. Like, let's fucking go. And I think I hadn't thought about it that way, but I think you're right. It's the same kind of mentality, but in the physical hardware space, which is amazing. I have rabbits and also chickens, and I've really been wanting to use, the exhaust gas from miners and ASICs to heat those enclosures. And I think I like fantasizing that in the future, we're going to have ASICs used in, home water heaters and, everything in between, in HVAC systems. And
absolutely,
I mean,
I've got a prototype I'm working on right now. A neighbor has a pool. We're gonna heat their pool this winter with an ASIC.
Yeah,
so it doesn't make any fucking sense. But why would you just waste fucking electricity and gas when you can get the same amount of heat out and also get Bitcoin, right? Like,
I think it makes a ton of sense, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's like, Exactly as you put it. It's like you can either, because correct me if I'm wrong, ASICs are incredibly efficient at converting electricity into heat.
Yeah, very, very good at it.
Right. So it's like, why would you, if you have the opportunity to, in addition to heating a thing that you already need to heat, you already want to heat, if you can generate Bitcoin out of that, like, let's fucking go.
Absolutely. The amount of like weird, nerdy, fringe stuff that the mining community is putting out these days is awesome. One of our fellow plebnet conspirators, Aaron, she built a hot tub out of a miner. Literal like a Coleman inflatable hot tub, strapped an S9 to it, and like made a whole wiki on how to do it. So if you want to learn how to make a inflatable hot tub using a Bitcoin miner, now's a great time because miners are cheap as hell. S9s, you could probably get them for free. Probably get them for free.
All right, let's talk turkey. What if a person, a friend whose name is also P, is trying to explore this world of creating alternative, potentially esoteric heating systems, right? I've got one miner here, but if I need more, what would you recommend? Would you say S9s? Are there other models that you'd say like, no, you can get these the cheapest? What's the right balance of, compute power versus?
So you're going to be when you're doing creative things, you're going to be a slave to two things. If you can't do 3D modeling on your own, you're going to need to go to where the kind of industry is for aftermarket support. So that's all Bitmain stuff. So if you go on like CryptoCloak's website, most of the stuff they sell is for Bitmain devices. But if you can design yourself, then you want to get whatever is cheap because you're probably going to break it anyway. So you want to get something that is, you can scoop off on eBay for $50. So S9s right now that kind of fit in that category. And then once you iterate the design, you feel comfortable, then you can get something that's also a little bit more power hungry, but put out a little bit more heat. So, you can get into the micro BT stuff, the WhatsMiner stuff. I would say best to start with an S9 because there's tons of aftermarket support for firmware and 3D printed shrouds. And if you need to duct the heat around or you need to do any kind of stuff with fluids, you should start there. Because there's all kinds of stuff that you can find. If you've got a 3D printer, you can find files online much more readily than anything that WhatsMiner's got. But if you are adept at the dark arts of 3D engineering, you might want to go down the micro BT path because the machines are a little bit more robust.
Got it. I'm just imagining this entire system where it's like you have the heat output, like you ever been in a house where they have the centralized vacuum system?
Mm-hmm.
Like before there was like
in the wall.
Powered.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not really a thing anymore because now you have, the battery technology has gotten good enough that you have like Dysons that you can just bring anywhere rather. But like in the 70s, 80s, it was like the bleeding edge house technology was you had these, in the wall vacuum systems. I was just thinking like, man, I wonder if we'll ever live in a world where you'll have the same thing. I guess it's already a central heating system. That's literally what a central heating system is. But like, imagine having like, a special unit where you have your ASICs and then they just vent the heat and you can just control your house in real time, like where that heat goes. You have your blow dryer, your convection oven. People are obsessed with air fryers these days. Why not air fry your food?
It all with machines.
Yeah, with a fucking S9. Makes sense.
That would be sick. So the problem you'll have there is the machines. The only problem with that hypothesis is the machines don't put out super useful heat. They put out heat that's a little bit too hot to be like comfortable. So it's annoying heat, but it's not hot enough to do anything useful like boil water. So you have to start it as like a pre-catalyst to some other kind of thing if you wanted to like cook or something like that. Maybe like preheat your oven with an ASIC or something like that.
I'm going to do it. Cooking a Thanksgiving turkey with an ASIC. Let's go. Dude, you should
Fire
totally do
fryer.
it. Wait, you got to do a video like that. Just like wreck a bunch of S9s.
So
overclock
I've thought
them.
about sous videing a steak in an
That's fucking
immersion
brilliant.
tank. Yeah. So because we've got a lot of immersion miners anyway, and I want to sous vide a steak in the fluid because the fluid's like the fucking perfect temperature for it. Perfect medium rare. Just leave it in there. Bro? I need to get my shit together. Start getting it after it,
That's a little too cooked, honestly, for Pete Rizzo's taste. In case you were going to invite
Pete Rizzo is a savage, borderlining on cannibal. Okay, so might not take his food advice. I've known Pete many years. I've seen him eat many weird things.
Wait, I'm out of the loop here. What are we talking about? Does he like eat raw steak?
Rizzo in Amsterdam ordered a raw steak, and his response when he saw it was, "This is too cooked."
It's literally just a slab of raw meat. Got it. Okay.
He prefers to chew on things that are still alive, sew them back up, keep on
Makes sense.
trucking. Yeah.
Makes sense. All right, where do we go from here, guys?
Well, I'd like to hear a little bit more just about, home mining. I think, P, you've talked about a little bit of just different ways you want to heat up your bunny rabbits, and then you want to help your chickens keep their eggs warm as well with ASIC miners. Marshall, what's the most creative thing you've ever seen someone use their Bitcoin miner for that does not mining Bitcoin though?
There are people that have built very small businesses, but a business for beef jerky, and they use a miner to dehydrate the meat instead of a dehydrator. Dehydrators are fucking expensive. They're not that cheap. And so they made their own with a miner. Another guy I met made a pasta dryer with a machine. So you make fresh pasta, you dry it out, and he also does like ramen that way. So he just makes noodles and uses a machine to. Because the nice thing about miners is you can control the heat really precisely by controlling the frequency and the power usage of the chips. And so apparently in pasta drying, like following a very specific up and down curve with humidity and heat is super important so that the noodles don't crack. I learned a lot about noodle production. And he says it's perfect for it. So
what is your favorite noodle?
Listen, man, I don't like to talk about carbs in public. Okay. It's one of my addictions and I'm working on it. Right.
That's fair. That's fair. We all have our demons. We're here to help. This is a safe space.
I'm not a very cultured man. I probably only know of like 2 types of noodles. So I'll just say spaghetti. There you go. It's my favorite type of noodle.
You fucking animal. I want to talk about a news story that came out recently. Reported by No Bullshit Bitcoin. Biden administration wants to make it easier to seize Bitcoin without criminal charges. They go through and summarize this document. It's buried deep in a 61-page recent report by the U.S. Attorney General. The Biden administration called for dramatic expansion in the federal government's ability to seize and keep cryptocurrency. If enacted, the proposed changes would bolster both criminal forfeiture, which requires a conviction to permanently confiscate property, as well as civil forfeiture, which does not require a conviction or even criminal charges to be filed. They are specifically arguing that it's unclear if this is already the case, but apparently the federal government can use administrative forfeiture to take almost anything aside from real estate and property valued at more than $500,000. You guys heard about this?
Yeah. So civil asset forfeiture has been a thing for a long time. So this is why, like, if you go through TSA with like gold bars, they're taking your shit because they can. And there's nothing you can do about it. So this is why people, like, if they need to transport something that's very valuable, they won't fly commercial, they'll fly private because you just get on a plane and there's no TSA. So that's the biggest threat to you yourself flying commercial is civil asset forfeiture. The best part about Bitcoin, how the fuck are you going to enforce it? How? You going to make me unlock my phone? Nah. You shouldn't have a lot of Bitcoin on your phone anyway. What are you going to do? Come to my house? Great, come through. Maybe I have a 15 of 15 fucking multi-sig that's in 15 different countries. You can't get my Bitcoin. So that's all well and good. Bitcoin doesn't give 2 shits. If you have, I'll say what Francis Pouliot says best. If you have a significant amount of Bitcoin, you should be quitting your job and focusing full time on how to protect your Bitcoin. And there's many strategies, there's many ways to do it. And Bitcoin privacy, that's the best part about Bitcoin is if you have Bitcoin and you memorize your 24-word seed, how the fuck are they going to get it from you if you destroy every other trace of it? If you memorize 24 words, you got your Bitcoin. Period. End of story. how are they going to take it from you? They're going to have to kill your family and pull your fingernails out, and you can still not give it to them.
I like that. In that example, it went one and then the other. They're going to kill your family first, and then it's when they pull your fingernails out that you're going to be like, all right, fine.
Correct. And then even if you wanted to give it to them, they might have to go to a different jurisdiction to get your shit. Bitcoin is ultimately portable. Bitcoin is ultimately obfuscatable if you choose so. If you keep 100 Bitcoin on your phone, you deserve to get your shit stolen.
100%. Which is why we always talk about on the show, like the importance of understanding and safely taking custody.
Guy said you can make another family. Fuck it. Yeah, you can make another family. That's
right. What do you think of all the noise that's happening recently around like CBDCs? Do you think that?
Oh God, I love it. I think it's the fucking greatest. Let me tell you why.
Okay, please do.
What they're
I have a very different opinion.
What they're saying out loud now is what we have pontificated as a community for a decade, right? We are very much at the tail end of the fight where they're trying to do something better. But they're not even concealing the fact that they're going to weaponize it against you. I was at a private conference at JP Morgan. Don't you fucking judge me. And
this is emanations of judgment, just waves of it.
One of the speakers there was the director of the IMF. His name's Tobias. And the moderator of the panel asked him, what does the IMF think about El Salvador? This was last year. He said, El Salvador has gone too far. Blah, blah, blah. And then started talking about how CBDCs were great. And he said verbatim, and I'll send you the video later. He said verbatim, if I don't like what you say, I can turn your money off. He just said that out loud. Like it's like that press conference from the Eagles. They are who we thought they were. It's all the shit that we have talked about. They are saying out loud now. And the fact that they think CBDCs are going to save their sinking ship is fucking hilarious. These goons, banks are Ponzi schemes run by morons. The Fed is fucking off the rails. It's all going to burn down, and you can throw whatever fucking CBDC you want at it. I don't give two shits, and neither does Bitcoin, because we're going to keep on chugging. We're going to have our self-sovereignty. There ain't a goddamn thing you can do about it.
I think that the scary thing there is the fact that they're willing to say that out loud. I think a huge portion of Americans believe that that is a just and reasonable thing. I think a lot of people, I think the battleground that's being fought right now is, PSYOP style, convincing people that centralized entities are the best people to decide whether or not you get access to your money.
I feel like maybe like 5 or 10 years ago, that was the case. But now, with so much shit going wrong and backfiring on these fucking morons and people who have more ready access to information than we've ever had before, there are less and less people. So I'll give you a perfect example. I was at a farm just last week, walking around with some of my family members, and there was like some tourists and stuff. And I was wearing this shirt that has a Bitcoin logo. It's for the nonprofit. 7 people who I've never met before in my entire life asked me, hey, are you in Bitcoin? I have some questions. And I'm like, sure. 7 times within 2 hours in the middle of fucking nowhere, Texas.
During a bear market.
And they're all young. That's the key. The people who are coming up are all young, and they know that this shit's broken. They know just because they've been alive for 2008, 2009. They've been alive for COVID. They've been alive for fucking Nord Stream 2 getting blown up. They've been alive for all the fucking bullshits that's been perpetrated throughout this decade. There is an inherent distrust in the system more now than ever. So while I might not have agreed a decade ago that people are going to be lulled into, slavery, I think the tide's going the other way now.
Fair enough. Key, what do you think? And you're muted.
It's his first time. Give him a break.
All right, fair enough.
My bad. Someone's got to pull a pee, and I guess it's been me this week. But I'm just curious, what do you think has triggered this shift in rhetoric? Because are we now paying better attention to it and catching those clues that have always been there, but we were just sort of oblivious to them? Or is it they're just becoming more audacious and just, we can say whatever we want, no one's going to really care?
That's a good. I don't think we're paying more attention. I think they're just saying the shit out loud that they used to be saying behind closed doors. You know. And the meme culture is so strong that people can immediately see that the meme circulating about inflation is transitory is like a perfect snapshot of what this generation has actually done. It's so easy to expose the horse shit now through memes, and people gravitate to it. Memes are literally changing the fucking world and the tone of geopolitics. It's awesome.
I love making this clarifying point. Memes have always existed. Memes were just predated by political cartoons, and political cartoons predated by hieroglyphics. Memes have always existed for society and humanity.
I think you're right, but the ability to disseminate them rapidly, the ability to disseminate them with less of the approval from the entities that are publishing those things has dramatically increased.
Yeah, man, let me tell you, Chair Force should probably not be given free right to make as many memes as he does, but love
That's
the
the
Chair
thing.
Force.
We can't control Chair Force. Nobody can.
Well, so let me ask you, let me present this question to the two of you. In 2022, we really get fed this idea that, oh my God, like the world has never been so divisive. It's black or white, this or that. But to your point, Pete, I really think a part of it is like our society has always been like this. These ideas have long existed, and the distribution of these ideas has not actually ever significantly shifted or changed. But because of the advent of the internet, because of our ability to share information so immediately, it feels as though these ideas, these conversations have become more prevalent when in fact they're just becoming more prevalent in, to Marshall's point, public settings, whereas some of these things were maybe just said behind closed doors privately, but now everyone shares how many shits they take on Instagram and every move they ever make all over social media. It's turned into, oh my God, it's polarizing, when in fact it's like, no, we overshare now.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much information, so it looks like our society has crumbled, when in fact it's like, no, we finally shone a light on ourselves and we just don't like what we see.
There's a lot of words there.
There was a lot of words, but essentially the question was like, has our society actually shifted, or do you think that because we have access to more information at a quicker pace, it looks as though our society has shifted?
I think any new technology people scream about and yell about, right? You can see when the printing press was, first a thing, people were like, oh, the common people, their brains can't handle the truth. Because previously it was like the church and priests that had access to the written word, right? And then like literally it was like same memes, like same comments, like there's too much noise. When books, as people started reading more, you can find pictures from not that long ago, like within the last, 100, 200 years of like people reading while eating. And there's like people reading on like corners, like lined up. And they're like, you see, they're glued to their fucking books. Like the real world is the only one that matters. Like fuck these people and the goddamn bookworms. And now it's the same thing, but with phones. So I think people always are scared of the newest information dissemination system. And at the same time, I do think that, and I know I'm taking it a slightly different direction than what you asked, but the ability for companies to fine tune the strategies that they use to manipulate our brains for profit, because the feedback cycle has gotten so much tighter, right? If you had to have a printed book, you couldn't like be sampling in real time, like how people are responding to this. With like Twitter and the ads that are, and Google ads and everything, they're basically trying to hack our dopaminergic systems in order to activate our reward systems to keep us fixated and engaged with these applications. I think that is genuinely a new thing. And I think that is potentially dangerous. I think it's really hard for us as humans to effectively use our will to do what is best for us when we're constantly confronted with these stimulatory, or this constant stimulation. I think that is a new thing. And I think we're learning as a culture right now in real time how to mitigate that as individuals, because we definitely cannot trust entities like Apple or Google or Twitter to mediate that for us, even as they try to present that. They try to be like, we're, screen time metrics, like Apple's trying to protect you. They're not trying to protect you. They're trying to figure out how they can continue to do what they're doing while still presenting you while still earning ad revenue from you. I don't know. Marshall, what do you think?
I agree with that. I've tried a few times to kind of drop off these kind of platforms that monetize your privacy, basically. Look, let me ask you, if Google offered a service where they would attest by like a third party or something and give you proof that they would never sell your info. I'm not even talking about you might still get ads, but they're not going to monetize you the way they monetize you now. Would you pay $1,000 a year for that service?
Interesting. I actually don't know that I would pay $1,000. I would pay $1,000 if I could not be shown ads. I find ads so egregious.
So you care more about not seeing ads than somebody selling your privacy?
Yeah. When you put it like that, that does seem like an insane statement to make.
I mean, in general, I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
And but that's never going to happen. And so the problem with trying to drop off the face for me personally is I like connection with people. I'm an extrovert. I like to connect with people on all mediums, virtual, in person, whatever. And I find that the more removed I get from these services, Twitter, Discord, Zoom, whatever, the lonelier I find myself. And that's not necessarily the problem everybody deals with, but it's much easier to have a community online and have access to more people when you are in that system. And that's my personal hangup. Is I have tried to, Graphene OS, I'm working on that kind of stuff, but like, it's a lonely road, man. And it's, it's it's lonely at the top, dog. You know what I mean? So that's my only takeaway from there,
Yeah. Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Agreed.
Yeah, I couldn't do graphene either. I had to switch to Calyx.
Really? Why? I'm in the middle of the transition right now, so I haven't done Calyx yet.
For the audience, these are privacy-focused distributions of Android OS. So you can get a Pixel device or several other Android supporting phones, and then you can wipe the Google installed spyware essentially and install these independently created and operated operating systems. Graphene is the most extreme. You're not able to use Google services at all with Graphene. So a lot of the things that the average person, myself included, need in order to be able to do my job, interact with my friends, are not available. If you're the most privacy focused, people tend to use Graphene, but I couldn't do it. Calyx OS, they're all, Graphene and Calyx are, friends. They're all, I think it was believed that Calyx was a fork of Graphene, or it might've been the other way around. Regardless, they, cross-pollinate constantly, but Calyx OS is a little bit more open, still very, very privacy focused, but uses I forget what the name of the tool is, but essentially it allows you to still interact with Google services, and it creates sort of anonymous accounts so you can still download stuff from the Play Store. So, Marshall, I would suggest trying to use Calyx. It's a lot easier to wean yourself to that rather than trying to go full, I have a dumb phone, I never text anybody, and I live in a hole in the ground.
There's a small part of my brain, the cypherpunk, that really just wants to live in a bunker and never talk to anybody again. But my parents cursed me with the extrovert gene, and it's fucking hard, man. It's really, really hard.
Yeah, it's not possible.
Tell you what, Marshall, I will join you because I have the same curse where every single time I go into isolation for a month and then I go interact with any human being, I'm like, oh, that's right. I am an extrovert and I need in-person human interaction. You get the bunker next door to my bunker.
Mm-hmm.
No one else near us.
Mm-hmm.
I love this plan.
Yeah.
Marshall's like, how did I walk myself into this nightmare?
Yeah, it's I'm slowly trying to ease into it because I want to be that person that can use graphene. I want to be that person, but god damn, it's hard. It's really hard to just have like, yeah, this is a phone that takes calls and texts, right? It's like you can't use Twitter. You can't do anything, and that's the point, right? Is nobody can track you because you don't do shit, you know. So that's like that's the inherent issue that I am running up into right now. Is maybe I'm just too ADHD to not do anything. I don't know.
You and me both, my friend. What do you think about the
Wait, I want to stay on this real quick. I'm just going to keep asking.
Just
these,
eat
like,
shoes and no one will never hang out with you again. Problem solved.
There you go.
Bam! Oh,
There you
that one
fucking
hits
go.
close. That one hits close.
how fucking dare you?
Got his ass.
Um,
I'm gonna need a moment. Chris, cut his mic.
if do you think that Tom, who is a Bitcoiner, Tom from MySpace, is a Bitcoiner, and
Is he a Bitcoiner?
He is a Bitcoiner.
That's
He
fucking
sold
dope.
MySpace, went and bought Bitcoin with it. Tom,
What a G.
long-time viewer. I'm in your DMs constantly. Would love to have you on the show, man.
Well, Tom's my friend. You know,
Same.
he was all our
Same.
friends, dude.
But I think
Same.
it can be said, yeah, he's all of our friends. That's the beauty of Tom.
Bro, Tom never sold my shit to anybody.
Exactly.
Okay,
Dude,
his site might have sucked. Okay, and it might have allowed many people to accidentally hack the site, but he ain't never sold my data. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Preach. Like, to your point, I think every single young person, especially in America, would be a far more skilled coder had they stuck to MySpace and not Facebook. But did Tom ring a bell that our society probably should not have had wrong, which is like the creation and then further use of social media? Or would someone else have just come along and created this?
It's interesting, right? Because MySpace wasn't the first, but it was the first with like mass adoption, right? Like I think Friendster and some others came first, but I guess I don't know specifically what MySpace did right that others hadn't. But I think humanity in general longs for connection. I think it's people tend to gravitate towards micro communities that understand them. Everybody's fucking weird. Everybody like feels that nobody understands them. Nobody gets along. But when you find those people, it's one thing to be loved, but it's profound to be understood. And the people that can come across that in communities and sub communities really gravitate that in any form or fashion. And I think human nature would have, if it wasn't MySpace, it definitely would have been something else.
I think that was the deepest thing I've ever heard you say. It's one thing to be loved.
It's profound to be understood. It's true, man. Like the fact that you have a fucking wife is like, that doesn't think you're a fucking weirdo lunatic, or maybe does think you're a weirdo lunatic, but doesn't make you sleep on the couch every fucking night. That's a big deal.
It's a big
Definitely
fucking deal.
thinks he's a lunatic.
It's a big fucking deal. It's true. I'm so lucky. I count my blessings every day. I look in the mirror and I'm like, how the fuck did this happen?
But that's just
Paid
like
a
inherent
lot of
nature,
money.
you know. People want to be around other people who. I'm gonna tell you a real weird fucking story that really
Do it.
sums this up.
Hit us with it.
That cross pollinates with Bitcoin. So 2013, I went to Seattle to look at a data center space for a new colocation, and we get to the hotel, and it's all cool. And then we get in the car, drive to the site, spend the day, come back in the afternoon. And it's like 5, 6 o'clock. We walk back into the hotel, and there is a fucking sea of people in this hotel who are wearing like furry costumes and My Little Pony stuff. And I just was like, what the fuck? And so me and my then girlfriend, I went up to a guy and I was like, what is going on? And he goes, oh, this is the world's largest brony convention. Would you like to join? For those of you who don't know, bronies are full-grown male and females who really enjoy My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, the TV show. And he was just like, come through. I got an extra ticket. Bring your chick. Let's roll. And I was like, I looked at her and she was like, let's get weird. And I was like, all right. So we went in. It's the first place I ever tried VR. And so then like we hung out, checked out the convention a little bit. And then we went back to our room and a note slides under my door. And we had just finished dinner and it was like, come down to this and this ballroom. There's a party. And I was like, all right, cool. So we went down and this is just hundreds and hundreds of people dressed up as My Little Pony figures and furries and like the most fringed people of society, all hanging out, raging their asses off, like doing lines of coke with each other, like the most insane party I've ever seen. Nobody is the same. Everybody's weird. Everybody's different. And they're all just raging. And there was something so fucking awesome about that experience. Nobody's judging each other. Everybody's just being their weird ass fucking selves in front of them. And that experience is like a microcosm of what the actual human experience is. It's just everybody just wants to kick it and get along. Nobody actually wants to be a dick. They're just a dick because somebody else was a dick to them. And if people can just kind of vibe and chill and not care about anything else, it's actually a pretty dope experience. And so that's why I think that like the social media movement would have gained traction in some form or another.
I love it. I think you're absolutely right. I know that for me, you know, coming out of like all the COVID lockdowns, that was definitely my experience. Like you and I met originally on Clubhouse, and it was like a similar thing. Like we would just get into these rooms and just like scream about whatever the fuck and Bitcoin. And we all come from such different backgrounds, with such different experiences, but we're all united by this, the fact that we care deeply about.
Yeah, see,
Bitcoin.
Somebody said My Little Pony is dope. I learned a lot about people from there. See, telling you,
go.
man, bronies are fucking lit. Everybody should be a brony because they got their shit figured out, man.
That's the pull quote. That's the pull quote for the episode. Q, I feel like you've been holding your tongue while Marshall and I just like riff and talk about the old times.
No, I'm enjoying being a participant in this conversation while the two of you just say some of the craziest, most outlandish things, and then it triggers a crazier question from me to then
Fair
trigger
enough.
said crazy responses. To be honest, I feel like this dynamic has worked really well.
Yeah, I mean we're killing it for sure. Marshall, I wonder, what are the, I forget if we already talked about this during this conversation. We talk about it a lot, but it's very interesting to me, the differences between each of the bull and bear cycles as Bitcoin gains greater and greater adoption over time. And I've only been in the space since 2017, but I remember, you know, or rather, you know, 2016, let's say, but I didn't understand Bitcoin until much later. But it's very interesting to see, to me, to experience the difference between, you know, the 2018 bear market, where everyone and their mother was like, "See, I told you Bitcoin was a fucking scam." Like, and everybody was, you know, removing Bitcoin payment systems still. They were distancing themselves from the idea of Bitcoin. Whereas now we're in a more significant bear market in terms of percentage decrease than we were even then. But more and more companies, huge companies, BlackRock, who we were shitting all over earlier, they're still actively putting out PR and talking about Bitcoin and how they are working to adopt it. What are your experiences in terms of those differences? That's one example from my own personal experience. But what are some of the other differences that you've experienced between this bear market and the last bear market?
It's interesting because this is the first bear market we have seen that has kind of cross-pollinated and shows a lot of things from when Bitcoin first came out. So when Bitcoin first came out on the heels of the economic crisis, so fucking global meltdown, all this shit, this is the first time that it's happening again, but Bitcoin's more prevalent now. So all the things that, you know, are in the Cypherpunk Manifesto and all the things that Satoshi wrote about are happening again. And this is the first time that we're actually seeing Bitcoin as a bit of a hedge against the psycho lunatics that are running the world economy. And so Bitcoin's actually stood up quite well. You see the S&P just taking a huge shit. We kind of front ran that. You're seeing Bitcoin as I'll run it back to before COVID. So in March, when Bitcoin had that huge dip, everything dipped. And that's because in times of great panic, people flee to cash, always. Fiat, always. And that includes all hard assets, gold, Bitcoin, real estate, everything took a huge shit. But Bitcoin was the first to recover. Bitcoin recovered within a month. Everything else took 6 months to recover. And now you're seeing Bitcoin as the true hedge that we thought it was. While everything is still going down, as you so eloquently put it, Bitcoin is just kind of sideways crabbing along. So this is the first bear market that we have seen Bitcoin stack up against the world like it did when it first came out. But now a lot more people know about it, and a lot more people are vying again to have Bitcoin as a hedge against the psychopaths.
Got it.
Marshall, I have one final question for you. When moon?
Listen, we're already there, dude. Okay? And we're only halfway up. All right? We're at the tippy top of the mountain, and we're only halfway up. All right?
So you're saying the top is only 40K?
And we're only halfway up.
You fucking bear.
We'll always only be halfway up. All right?
Marshall, I want to give you the chance as we wind this down to make fun of the two of us, share with our audience any final thoughts, or just bring up anything that you did not have the opportunity to discuss because we're bozos who didn't ask you about it.
Sure. We can roast people in the chat too. Shout out to the guy that roasted me for thinking that I was co-opting Africa. Good call out. Shout out to Ansel Lindner, who has wrote a defamatory blog post about me early days. Shout out.
We'll be on in about 2 minutes, so I look forward to honestly.
Banger.
We're gonna put you and Ansel together on camera.
Perfect. Shout out to look, at the end of the day, it's all about mining. Okay, always has been, always will be. If you're not stacking hash and slapping ass, you're fucking up. All right. Simply put.
That's it. That's all you can say.
That's the tweet.
Yeah. Man, thank you so much for joining us, Marshall. We have a lot of fun. The conversations that we had, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like an old fucking man, but I'm like, remember the days on Clubhouse when we used to yell at each other about cloacas and chickens? Absolutely incredible.
But what has changed? Pause. What has actually changed?
Yeah, absolutely nothing. The only difference is that it's
on camera now.
It's on camera.
It's on camera in front of your face.
Only change. But yeah, man, I appreciate you, and I've learned an incredible amount from you, and I don't think you get enough credit in the space. So thank you for joining us.
I appreciate you, and you guys are crushing it, man. I think this show is exactly what BTC Media needed. I've been good friends with David for a long time, and you guys really are crushing the game. The fact that this is running like clockwork and that you guys are incredibly entertaining hosts. You ride the line between raunchy and awesome perfectly. I think you guys are fucking crushing the game.
Well, thanks, man.
We appreciate those kind words. The Bitcoin that was agreed upon will be in your wallet.
All right, my friends. Let's go to a brief commercial. Reminder, if you have not already, tickets for Bitcoin 2023 are available using code BMLive. You can save 10% on that purchase. Also, the physical magazine is available. We're going to cut to a quick commercial, then we will be back, and shortly after that, we will have Ansel joining us for Fed Watch. We'll see you soon.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another exciting episode of Fed Watch. My name is Ansel Lindner, and I'm here, as always, with my co-host, CK. How are you doing, CK?
Doing good, man. Yes, sir. 100% better. Back in the office. Excited to talk global macro and Bitcoin. We got some pop in the Bitcoin price.
Oh,
Love
yeah.
to see it.
Oh, yeah. We got tons to talk about. I wanted to spend a good bit of time today talking about China again, because I think it is one of the biggest geopolitical events of this generation. Maybe the rise of China was one of the biggest geopolitical events or happenings of the last generation, and now we're going to see the fall of China. We've been talking about that for a long time, but I wanted to go through some extensive clips, so that's going to be a big segment of today's show. Also go through a ton of charts. We have, of course, the Bitcoin breakout. We have stuff to talk about with the dollar, energy markets, yields, all sorts of stuff. So we'll hit on that. So a wide-ranging show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Want to give a quick shout out. Get your copy of Bitcoin Magazine. Subscribe to the newest issue, the Orange Party issue. We are going to be shipping out next week. So get hyped for it. So go get your subscription today and go get a Bitcoin conference ticket. So ticket prices are going up in a couple of weeks. We are almost just 200 days away from the next Bitcoin conference in Miami. I'm really excited for it. The details are starting to really get fleshed out, and we have a lot of awesome speakers that are going to be announcing moving forward. So programming, branding, vibes, it's all coming together. It's going to be huge. We've already sold thousands of tickets, so use code BMLive for both of those. But yeah, Ansel, we gotta jump into the charts. A lot to dig into.
All right. Well, right before we do that, just say, everybody, you guys got to join my Telegram channel. I do 5 days a week of live stream. So if you want to get more of this type of stuff like we're going to be covering today, go check out t.me/Bitcoin and markets. All right. Yeah, let's get into the first chart here, Chris. Can we pull up the Bitcoin price? This is why we're all here, guys. Hate it. Everything revolves around the Bitcoin price. If it was going to zero, then no, this community would be zero as well. So, CK, what are you thinking about this little pop in the price? Is this a real breakout? Are we seeing this pattern actually come to fruition, or is this a fake out?
It's tough to tell, honestly. But we did call, this trend line here last week on the show. We were hovering right under Ansel's line. Ansel did not move the line, but we broke up. So we said that it could either go up or down. I've been kind of calling a breakdown personally. I just still think that things could get more bearish. But sometimes when I get bearish on the immediate price, maybe that's the indicator. So yeah, I still think it's a little early to say this is a breakout. But, if we continue to smash forward into the weekend, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the fundamentals are really behind this move, I think. But the one thing that makes me kind of conservative here on calling it a real breakout is the volume just has not come in to support this move. So if you look at all the spot exchanges, there's really not a big spike in volume or anything that usually accompanies these breakouts. So just be careful if people are trading and they're going to go all in on a long or something. Just be careful at this section because we don't have every confirmation ticked yet, and we'll see how this develops over the next couple days. Anything else to add there on the price, CK?
People are trolling me saying that I'm not bullish enough. I'm very, very bullish. It's just, it's tough to make calls on the immediate price. So when you try to do that, try to be accurate, guys.
Yeah. What's the saying? Never name a price and a time. Right. So if you do that, you're almost guaranteed to be incorrect. And that's why I think Plan B was ultimately so castigated from the community, because he tried to call prices and times, and that's a big no-no. But anyway, yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes in the future, in the near future.
The best we can do is be directionally correct.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's going up long term, right? If you've been bullish, you've been more right than wrong over the last 5 years. So, okay, let's move on to some currencies. So the next slide, next few slides, I'm going to talk about the dollar. So Of course, we've been talking about a strong dollar here on the show all the way back probably into COVID. And then we had the dollar continue to trend downward, as this chart is showing, into the new year, bottomed around the first week of January, and has been pretty much only up since then. The green line here is the DXY, which is heavily weighted towards the euro and the yen and the bigger currencies out there, the pound as well. And the black line is the broad trade weighted dollar, which includes more than 30 currencies. Importantly, it includes the Chinese yuan and the Mexican peso. Those, I think, are very important to put in there when you're talking about the dollar. But as you can see, they're both going up dramatically. The broad one is not going up as dramatically, but then they're both kind of ticking over. If you can see that at the very top, they're both kind of curling over. And this could be the correction we've been waiting for. So if you go to the next slide, Chris. Again, I've been talking about a strong dollar for a long time. We have been talking about a strong dollar for a long time. And one thing is when it was breaking into new highs, I took the Fibonacci retracement tool out and I looked at the extension line, and that's the common extension line is the 1618. And so that gave me a target around 112, 113 for this move. And I talked about that probably in June, July time this year on this show. So you can go back and look at some of those earlier episodes to hear that. But we hit that target. I mean, we surpassed 114. And now I think, this is a good time for a correction. Nothing goes up in a straight line, not even Bitcoin. And so a correction is bound to happen at some point. And the wrecking ball dollar, like everybody just started talking about the wrecking ball. And so that tells me it's time for a correction if everyone's jumping onto that side of the trade. And last dollar chart I have here is the next one. This is just zooming in, and you can see this just collapse over the last couple of days. Breaking pattern support, breaking horizontal support, breaking all sorts of support. So I could see this moving another 10% down, down to the 102, 103, something in that range. I don't know, but it is, I think we shouldn't expect the dollar to go really high, really fast, right? If you look back, actually, if you could go back, Chris, to the last one, slide number 3.
I want to unpack that a little bit more after your next point.
Okay, so you can see from 2017, and if you go back a little bit further, it's actually like 2016 into 2021, we have this horizontal range between 90 and 100, basically. And I think we're going to see another period like that, where we set a new higher range, whether that is 105 to 115, or whether that's 110 to 120, something like that. We're going to set a higher range. We're going to bounce around in that for a couple years, maybe 4 or 5 years, and then we're going to go to the next leg up. That's how I interpret. The reason why I say that is because I'm interpreting the long-term credit cycle of dollars, the dollar-based credit system that we have today, and how it dies. And it dies in these stair-step fashions. Nothing is going to die all at the same time. So it's got to go through these stair steps, and that's why I'm calling for a new range up here, roughly where we're at. Okay, Christian, I'll shut up for a second. What do you got, buddy?
So I wanted to unpack why you're saying you're kind of documenting or trying to explain the natural way that the dollar dies. Can you talk to me about the mechanisms that are going to kind of sustain the dollar at a flat period? Because it does feel like the things that made the dollar strong and rip upwards, that's not slowing down, right? People are still scrapping for dollars, and it seems like it's the only currency market that is not in complete chaos. So I'm kind of curious, fundamentally, why, outside of just the chart, why do you think the dollar is going to range for a while?
Well, I think it goes in phases. When there's acute dollar stress, so there's a huge dollar shortage, and these banks can't get access to dollars to pay their debts. Once the worst of the worst go bankrupt, get defaulted on, or they get a bailout, then there's a period of calm, because the worst of the worst has been alleviated or liquidated. And so then it takes a while, a little bit of reflation, a little bit of recovery until the next shoe drops. And that was the next marginal players that are in the worst shape, that they get into acute trouble. So it takes a little bit, each really intense phase of dollar shortage will be followed by a slight recovery because it's just not as bad, right? And then it goes on to the next step. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it does. Obviously, like you said, nothing goes up forever, and there is a lot of human psychology that kind of goes into how decisions are made in mass, right? How the market kind of coalesces around something. So it does make sense, but I would be interested to see, what happens again in the short run, and kind of how the news and all this other stuff affects sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, there's always these big news events that happen. Of course, we just lived through the UK stuff. Whether there's smoldering under the surface and that will reemerge, in a breakout fire, we'll have to see. The China stuff, I'm very interested in how this is going to work because we saw the Chinese stock markets really sell off. I don't have a chart of that, but the Chinese markets really sold off. The Hong Kong index, the tech sector had their worst day ever, I believe, in the history of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. It went down 8% in a day. Some big companies like Alibaba and Baidu, they went down 15% in one day. So there is like this, it feels like an exodus of capital. There's a big capital flight maybe starting to take place in China. How does that affect Western markets? How does that affect Bitcoin? I think that could be a huge bid under Bitcoin for capital flight. Like the best way to get money out of the country is, of course, Bitcoin. It's safer than almost anything else. Even if you have family members abroad, say in Canada, and you buy a bunch of land or something, I mean, even that has at least they can track it. They can find you and they can know what you did with the money. But with Bitcoin, it's a lot easier to hide it. It's a lot easier to get it out, move it anywhere in the world. You're not just limited to, certain jurisdictions. So, yeah, what do you think about the Chinese stock market and putting a bid under Bitcoin?
I mean, you have been kind of forecasting this dynamic for a while with Europe. In that breakdown, we saw Bitcoin volume spike in the UK when they were having, kind of like moments of extreme fear. So I think that this kind of mechanism for Bitcoin is only going to continue to increase. That's Bitcoin's obvious utility. And, to talk about what's wrong with China, we've been talking about China is not business or even human individual friendly on any level, really. So what is stopping the most talented from fleeing, right? On top of that, they don't have spot exchanges or anything like that within their jurisdiction directly with their currency. So all of the volume is P2P. So it's a lot more difficult to kind of just get a quick chart and map the increases in volume. So we don't know how this is affecting Bitcoin prices as much as we knew about it when it came to the recent UK crisis.
Absolutely. And I mean, the demand over there is staggering. The last kind of wave of money or capital flight out of China that we saw was in 2016 and 2017. And what happened then, right? So put a huge bid under Bitcoin at that time. Also, we saw most of the trading volume was in China. That there is some debate whether that trading volume was wash trading or how much was actual legitimate trading. But upwards of 95% of trading volume for Bitcoin was on Chinese exchanges back at that time. So the market has changed. The regulations within China have changed. So there is, and the political atmosphere and the business atmosphere in China has changed. So everything is different today. Has it gotten worse to be where there'd be a bigger bid under Bitcoin? We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
I mean, Xi's speech during the Congress was defense, defense, defense. And in the past, it was always the main objective was like profits and wealth and markets, is to increase that capacity within China. So we've been noting for a long time on this show that change in sentiment and policy and action, and it was very stark. The attacks on the tech sector earlier this year and last year, and now it is continuing to seep into the rhetoric. So it seems as though for the first time in a long time, the overarching ethos, at least from the top line leadership, is changing. And that's bad for business, honestly.
Yeah, it's bad for business if you don't want to keep all your capital there. I mean, geez. But let's try to hit some of these other charts here. I don't want to run out of time because I think that stuff about China, the videos that we have here, the video clips at the end, I think are extremely important. So here is
right, let's run through the charts and then we can spend more time on China.
All right. So this is, it looks like an inverse of the DXY, doesn't it? But it's the euro, and you can see it broke past parity again. So now it's up above 1-to-1. Very interesting. Next slide is the Japanese yen. And this looks inverse because the fraction is inverse. So this is 150 or 146 yen per dollar. And you can see it also looks like it could have put in a top and is coming down. So both the euro and the yen look to be strengthening against the dollar over the last week. And that will, of course, make the DXY come down. But this is interesting, too, because, you know, a strong dollar, we would say, would be bad for Bitcoin in a way, right? But what about a strong yen? Why isn't a strong yen bad for Bitcoin in Japan? And why isn't a strong euro bad for Bitcoin in Europe? I think it takes a little bit deeper thinking, and it's not just as easy as saying, like, a strong dollar is bad for Bitcoin. But I don't want to get hung up on that too much. Let's go to the Chinese yuan.
Oh, everything is good for Bitcoin, Ansel.
True. You're right. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so this is the Chinese yuan, and these two big red candles recently, I believe, were intervention. If you look at the first one at the end of September, it fell dramatically, and then it had a period of about a week where it just didn't trade. So it definitely looks like there was some intervention going on there. And then as soon as that intervention stopped, like the freezing of the market stopped, that trend just resumed as if it was still going on. So I think the trend for the Chinese yuan is lower. On this chart, that would be higher. So more yuan per dollar. And then just today, it looks like there was some intervention in the Chinese business hours to really push this exchange rate to strengthen the yuan, which is interesting. You know, if they want to up their exports, the common economic understanding, if you want to increase your exports, you want to weaken your currency. That makes your exports cheaper compared to the rest of the world. But in this case, the big mammoth exporter that is China is strengthening their currency with intervention. So it kind of
trying to.
Yeah, trying to. It speaks a little to some desperation. But that's all the currencies I have. Should I just keep on going?
Yeah, let's keep ripping through it.
All right. So the next chart up is the S&P 500. You guys know, if you've been watching the show, I am a relative stock market bull because I think it's correlated with Bitcoin right now. Bitcoin's going up and the stock market is going to go up. I thought the bottom was in June, but it made marginally lower lows, bounced right off a perfect level back there in 2020 and is recovering right now. So it is kind of a precarious time right now. If the bounce doesn't continue at this point for the stock market, we could roll back over, and that could be correlated with this lack of volume that we're seeing in the Bitcoin price or in the Bitcoin chart. So perhaps this is a false bounce. Perhaps this is a false breakout in Bitcoin, and we'll just have to watch that quickly. All right, next chart is the 3-month 10-year inversion. We've been watching yields on the show off and on. Of course, the 2 and 10 is kind of the most popular spread to watch to call an inversion in the yield curve. But this one is the one that people say is, oh, this is very important to the Fed, is the 3-month 10-year, and you can notice that yesterday intraday it went below, it did invert, but today it's also inverted only by 3 bips, but that is an inversion, and that is saying something big. If you go to the next chart, this is kind of like my rainbow chart of yields. I tried to label what they were here. So the green line on top right now is the 6-month. Then it goes 2-year, 5-year, 3-month peaking above the 10-year. And then that one on the bottom is the 4-week. I also highlighted the proposed, if the Fed is going to raise by 75 basis points, that is the new range up there at 3.75 to 4%. And you can see the 10-year is sitting right at 4.02%. So as I've been saying, the Fed will raise rates as long as they can, as long as the market expects them to, as long as the market gives them room to raise. Well, if the 10-year is falling through where the Fed target is supposed to be, that tells me that the market doesn't believe the Fed is going to raise, or I don't know if the Fed will raise into that condition because they don't want to lose face and say, oh, we raised rates, but the 10-year kept falling. So I think that's all of my currency charts. So what do you got to say for those, Christian?
Well, I think the last one is the one we got to stick on a little bit longer, because you've been talking about this dynamic for a long time, and I keep asking you to tease it out more. But it's really this idea that the Fed was not raising rates. The market was increasing. Rates within the market was going up, and that allowed for the Fed to push that narrative forward that they were doing that. And if the market then now lowers rate because of real market dynamics, the Fed could push their narrative, but at some point they have no choice but to chase reality and try to get the narrative to reaccommodate reality. Did I kind of break that down accurately, and what would you add to that? You muted.
Sorry about that. If rates are rising and the Fed is raising rates, this reinforces this mythology around the omnipotent Fed, that they can do whatever they set their mind to, they can accomplish. And so then their narrative gets even more and more power. But if the rates stop listening to them, if the narrative is losing power, the Fed has no choice but to follow what the rates are doing, what the market is doing. So as you can see here on the left side of this chart, rates are above this range. And that's that kind of like railroad track looking thing. That's like the range currently with the repo rate and some other important rates that are their own horizontal line. But so as long as the rates stay above the Fed raising rates, that's all the Fed needs to do. But once the rates disagree with the Fed has no choice but either to lose face and continue raising rates, or pause and pivot and follow the rates lower. And that's what I think they'll do in order to maintain confidence in the Fed, in order to maintain their mythology. That is what the Fed's that's their monetary policy tool, is the Fed mythology and the Fed narrative and stuff like that. So yeah, that's about as much as I can tease it out, I guess.
All right, let's move on. We got 30 more minutes.
30 minutes. I think we'll need 20 for the clips. So let's go to the next one. And this is Robin Brooks. I don't know exactly who this is, but I saw this on Twitter and being liked and retweeted by a bunch of people. So I like this chart too. And actually, Chris, my noggin is taking up the part of the chart. If you could take us out of there. But this is showing the European gas contracts and their gas prices. And this is what it says. The collapse of European gas prices isn't about an abundance of gas. It's about a lack of storage. Nothing about the fall in gas prices, whether in the spot market, which is white on this chart, or the 1 year ahead, which is orange on this chart, makes things in February or next winter easier because they can't store all this cheap gas. So what this is, at the end of last episode, if you guys go to last week and you go to the last 3 minutes, we hit on this right here. And I say that what the European natural gas market looks like reminds me a lot of what's happened in April of 2020 with oil prices, when there was just no place to deliver the oil. And so everybody had to sell. Everyone had to sell their futures contracts because nobody could take delivery. There was no place to accept delivery. So the price went negative. And we're seeing a very similar dynamic happening in European natural gas. If you go to the next slide, Chris, please. That is the 1 hour ahead natural gas price. I'm not exactly sure where this is, where Andreas Steno got this, but Andreas Steno, who we interviewed several weeks ago, he posted this one. And actually, this is the Dutch natural gas futures spot price next hour for the European megawatt per hour price. However, he's doing this, but he said in this tweet, he said, whoops, it's gone negative. So as you can see, the prices are starting to go negative on all this. Okay, let's move along with these other charts here real quick. I do have some freight charts. So we've talked about shipping rates on the show here, and they kind of show, they give you a snapshot of what's happening kind of in supply chains. This is the Baltic Dry Index. So this is the kind of average price for bulk dry goods. That would be steel, that would be probably iron ore or wheat or anything that doesn't go in those big 40-foot containers that you see on those container ships. That's what this shipping rate covers. And you can see it's come down dramatically. I think it's 75% from the top, and it doesn't look like there's any sort of major bid. We have lower lows and lower highs. Next slide. This is the Freightos 40-foot container unit prices. And we started talking about this last year, or I think maybe at the beginning of this year when it was around 10,000. And now it's down at 3,000. So it's also come down about 70%. And this chart specifically is from China to West Coast US, but you can find a very similar chart for China to East Coast, China to Europe, wherever. So these container prices are dropping dramatically, showing that there's some sort of normality returning, at least in prices, to the shipping sector. So I think that's all I have here. Yep. Next up is China. Do you have anything on this, CK, on the last four charts? We talked about European natural gas and about shipping.
One of the keys here is that a lot of the crazy prices really came from a result of policy decisions. So a really big reason why natural gas prices pumped was because going into potential war scenario with Russia, and as that was developing, all of these European nations were like, holy crap, we need to fill our reserves now that we don't have a pipeline from Russia sending us the gas. So they filled up their reserves. We talked about that with Andreas a month ago. And now there's ships just sitting outside filled with LNG, just trying to offload it, and they can't. So obviously that creates chaos in markets. That also, policy is just going to shut down the American economy. That created the negative prices in oil over here. Again, the freight the freight peak from China to the West Coast, that again is a policy decision that drove those prices skyrocketing. So as the policy decisions kind of unfold, they create chaos, and hopefully we're going to move into a world where policy decisions can affect us all less. But the ripple effects from these kind of macro things, like, it takes years to play out. And we may be seeing it in U.S. retail this year, tons of sales. Ansel's been calling this out for a while, but there's way too much stock. I think Nike in their earnings report was talking about they're going to have to start liquidating in order to make room for next year, and they just had way too much stock. And that's just one example of chaos that's created through these policy decisions that really affect the market.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I wrote down here, central planning trying to solve the problems of central planning. So, I mean, that's what happened in Europe. They did some sanctions. That was government intervention. And now they're trying to centrally plan their way out of just epic failure on both sides. So anyway, let's move on to the China stuff. I want to make sure we can get to this. And so Chris, if you could cue up the first clip, let me just talk about this real quick. I'm sorry, buddy. Sorry, man. Okay, real quick this is Lei Real Talk YouTube channel, and she is a China expert, and she started looking at this thing that happened with Hu Jintao and how he was publicly purged, and she goes in great detail on why she thinks this is a major thing and how the purging of Jintao fits exactly in with her other analysis that's going on. So I picked out 3 clips from this episode of her live stream to go through. I think it's very important for us to understand what's happening in China and see how bad it could get and how quickly it could get that bad. So, all right. Sorry, Chris. Now I'm ready. I'm ready for you, man.
Let's talk about something that's very important, which is, what did the CCP vote after Hu Jintao was removed? Right, it was the closing session of the 20th Party Congress. In my mind, the most important thing is the party constitution amendments that Xi Jinping pushed. So they voted to pass 3 amendments, and it's worth spending some time to review what they are, because they will tell us the direction that China is going to. So the first is it include the party constitution now include what Chinese say the 2 safeguarding and then the 2 establishments. So it's a long CCP jargon. I'm not going to read it. You could read it, but basically it just reaffirm Xi Jinping's core position within the party. It also reaffirms the authority he has within the party, right? It also reconfirms the Xi Jinping thoughts as the guiding wisdom of the party. And the reason this is important for Xi Jinping to include this in the party constitution is that now, if these things are added to the constitution, anyone who's against Xi Jinping, you're basically against the party. You know, the biggest crime that one could commit in China is to be against the party. That's like political crime number 1. So by adding this amendment, he's basically making anyone who could possibly be opposing him to be anti-CCP, and that's a big crime. And the you could watch my video that I released on October 18th, because that video is explained why, adding these amendments to the constitution is very important to Xi Jinping. It's a very detailed. I explained it very detailed in this video. You can watch it. So the second amendment is related to Taiwan. Okay, it added these verbiage. So it basically said, the conference refers to the party Congress. So include basically the fighting spirit, fighting ability of the military, and strengthening the military through political ideas and reforms. Through political ideas, it's hard to translate the language. Basically, it means that the party will guide the military, right? So any military development, any military reform must follow party guidance. Like, it has to be politically correct. So politics rule over military strategies. That's just what CCP. How CCP runs their military. And then it has added 3 adjectives. The one country, 2 system principle is not new, but they added 3 adjectives: comprehensively, accurately, and firmly. So these 3 adjectives is important to Xi Jinping, because then he could interpret them however way he wanted. So if these verbiage are in the party constitution, then he can say, anytime if someone opposes his military strategy, he could say, well, this is not this is not comprehensively implementing one country, two system principle. Right? This is not accurately implementing one country, two systems principle. So these three adverbs give him the leeway to interpret his military strategy however he sees fit. Okay, and then he has the Taiwan independence, the one country, two system, and the unification of the motherland, all of that added to the party constitution. So the fact that this is added makes me think that, the threat over Taiwan is serious. It is there. Okay, the third amendment he made is concerning the economy, the direction of Chinese economy. Again, common prosperity is mentioned and is added to the constitution. So now, if you don't follow the direction of common prosperity, then you're really against the party. That's a big, big label to be imposed on anyone, right? So, and then it reiterated the internal market chain. It used the Chinese is 内循环. I don't even know how to translate that. It's like basically it will focus, its entire development model will be based on an internal or domestic supply demand cycle. It's not going to rely on as the main support for the economy. And then the mutually reinforcing domestic and international market cycle or chain is only a supplement. So you see, it's going to focus on its domestic 内循环, domestic supply and demand. It tries to cut the tie from the outside world and just be self-sufficient. I think that's the underlying message. So again, by adding this to the party constitution, I think it sends a very strong message to everyone. This is the economic direction that Xi Jinping has for China for the future, at least for the next 5 years. By common prosperity, it's really going back to the planned economy. I think people say this is a very clear message that China is steering away from a market economy and is going back to a planned economy.
All right. So just to recap there, Xi Jinping is the CCP now. Taiwan is an increased interest, and they're going to put more weight on domestic economy over exports and over international trade and turn insular. So those are added to the Constitution now, and I thought that was very interesting. CK, do you have any reaction to that?
So I think that's pretty clear. Why as free market advocates we see this as very dangerous. I want to zoom out even more and talk about how this shows that being able to change the Constitution, change consensus, if you will, easily is a bad thing.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, is a superiority of the American system, even against other Western systems, is that it's very hard to kind of change the protocol. And I think Bitcoin is rooted in that same wisdom, which is that easy change, easily being able to label someone as a criminal against the party, all those kind of things, even if there's consensus around that in the moment, it's not a good thing. And I think from a first principles basis, markets basis, I think, we are seeing the demise and decline of China right in front of us through, you can call it narcissistic or communistic or whatever activity is happening at the top. The centralized decision making is starting to go wrong.
Yeah, awesome. I was thinking the other day that the Constitution, I think I said this on a live stream, that the Constitution, the way we amend our Constitution is kind of like a soft fork, where the Chinese way is kind of the hard fork way to amend it. So that's interesting that you observe the same sort of thing. All right, let's go on to the next clip because these are longer than normal. Apologies, guys.
Great information though, great context. Absolutely.
And this one was wow for me. So it gets really good. She like builds up through this and really is hard hitting in the last minute of this clip. So Chris, can you pull up the next one?
This is the guy. This is the guy who heads up the CCP's Central Policy Research Office. And his name is Jiang Jingquan. He replaced Wang Huning in 2020. And this organization, Central Policy Research Office, is said to be the Xi Jinping's brain, shall we say, or the organizations like his advisor, his political advisor, his policy advisor, right? His great ideas, or supposedly great ideas, come from this organization. So this guy, Jiang Jingquan, is his lead advisor. Okay. And this guy, in a recent interview during the 20th Party Congress, has basically made a comment. I don't know if I have it here. Maybe I have it in Chinese. I'll read it to you. He basically said what Xi Jinping has accomplished in the past 10 years is similar to what Zunyi Conference and the 11th Party Congress, the third session of the 11th Party Congress, have accomplished. So he made an analogy between Xi Jinping's accomplishment to these two major events that happened in the history of the CCP. I want to talk a little bit about the Zunyi Conference, January 1935. It was the event that established Mao Zedong as the CCP leader. At that point, you know, the Red Army was on the brink of being totally defeated. They were on the what they call the Long March. It was basically a devastating point where they were on the brink of total collapse. But there was a meeting held at Zunyi, and at that meeting, it was there was a huge power struggle. Basically, Mao Zedong beat it out the other leader who was backed by the Soviet Communist Party, by the Russian Communist Party, and became the top leader. So that event in January 1995 established Mao Zedong's leadership within the CCP. And then the 11th Party Congress, the third session of the 11th Party Congress in December 1978, established Deng Xiaoping's leadership. And that was also the official end of the Cultural Revolution. And it's also the starting point of the economic reforms. So when Xi Jinping's top advisor, lead advisor, made an analogy to say what Xi Jinping has done in the past 10 years, or his accomplishment is similar to the accomplishment of these two events, he's basically saying, I want to read his quote. He's saying, here we go. Oh, here it is. He's saying, he's saying the 18th Party Congress, which was Xi Jinping's first party Congress, re-steered this party and then the country back to the correct direction. He said, Mao Zedong in 1935 saved the party at the crucial moment. And then Deng Xiaoping saved the party from collapsing economically, also at a crucial moment in 1978. So he's implying that Xi Jinping also saved the party 10 years ago, or at least steer the party and the country back to the right course. And that's kind of the political direction, the framework, I should say, the political framework that's going to be the basis for Xi Jinping's next 5 years. He is basically clearly saying the economic reform was not wrong in the beginning when Deng Xiaoping started, But in the last 20 years, or the 20 years before he came to power, during Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin's time, it got sidetracked, or it went off in the wrong direction. And it caused serious crisis within the Communist Party. And when he came on board, he steered the party, or he's trying to steer the party back to the right course. And he's doing that to save the regime from collapse. So that's what his whole argument. So I think what we will see is, after the party Congress, I think he will take down more Jiang Zemin's people. I think more people from the Jiang faction will be taken down. China will become a more closed society. The economy will return to a planned economy. And basically, to summarize, China will become a supersized North Korea, or is on track to become a supersized North Korea. So this is what I have seen based on.
All right. All right. Yeah. So there, to summarize, she said that this guy compared Xi Jinping to these other parts of history of the CCP where they're on verge of collapse, and they were saved by these events, and that Xi Jinping is now saving the CCP once again from collapse, which is very interesting. And then in her at the end, what her conclusion is that it's going to be a closed society. There was going to be more purges, and that it was going to become China could become a supersized North Korea. And that last quote, supersized North Korea, just like struck me as, wow, man, imagine if that happens and how fast that happens. It's going to be crazy. What are your thoughts on that last clip?
I mean, it really kind of puts things into perspective. We're already seeing these crazy images of just Chinese people queuing up in massive lines to get COVID tested, so that way they can get their green badge, so they can even enter their home. Like, we're seeing just young men and women sleeping on the streets because they didn't pass protocol. Like, that is moving in a insane direction, very much closer to how North Korea operates than how any other market-based, liberty-based, country or jurisdiction operates. So, I'm very interested to see how it plays out. But effectively, this is, and you can see in the amendments that she goes over in the first video, like, they're sweeping the leg on the entire strategy here.
Yep, exactly. All right, we're running real close on time. We have one more clip that's 3 minutes. Do we got time for that?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
How do you see China maintaining their place as second largest economy by becoming isolationist or reclusive? Will they be able to maintain it? Rather, do they intend to maintain second spot? Economy is secondary to Xi Jinping. It's not that important to him. Having prevent the regime from collapse is more important. I always say the China we see from the outside is different from the China these CCP leaders see. Everything we see has been beautified, has been massaged. The data is massaged. Things that they don't want us to know are not revealed. So the dire situation, the dire reality in China is much more serious than the outside world can see. And there was also a discussion. So why people say, how could Xi Jinping hold on to power when so many people are against him, right? How could he hold on to power indefinitely? What happened to all the other smart Chinese who don't like him? He has so many people who are not happy. One reason is corruption. Corruption is such a widespread epidemic that people don't have the determination. I mean, the only people who are strong enough to oppose him are the people who really care about the future of China, are the people who really care about Chinese people, right? Only those people have the determination and the courage to be against a dictator like him, to be against the system. All the other CCP officials, they're corrupt. They want to live a good life. They have all the money. Some are in Swiss account or in the US. They have their families and children living somewhere else in the world. Why do they want to be opposing a system that has given them everything? Right? And if they do that, then Xi Jinping's anti-corruption knife could fall on them. So they don't. They are corrupt. So that's why nobody, is really, taking the chance to oppose him. So to answer your question, economy is not important to him. He wants to hold on to power. He wants the communist model to be successful. He wants to. He truly believes in this model. He truly believes in communism is the best model for the world, and he wants to hold on to power. He wants this model to work, and he wants to roll that out to the world, to the rest of the world, because that's really the essence of what the communist ideology is.
All right. So there she did some Q&A. And just to recap, so she said that Xi does not care about the economy. It's a far distant second place. And to put that in perspective with the how she said that they view Xi as saving the party from collapse, it just seems like the time is running out on this era of China. And people are starting to see it. I've noticed it in tweets. I've noticed it in other places where people are like, oh my God, I didn't realize that China was so Marxist and that this was close to collapse. And now everyone's starting to see that. So CK, any reaction to this final clip?
I mean, you've been on top of this for a long time. When people were saying China is a rising power, even Ray Dalio just a few months ago, you've been calling out that no, it's not, and markets will prevail. That's honestly, in hindsight, it sounds like common sense. But yeah, they're in a bad spot. And throughout all three videos, it was not about what is good for China. It was all about what is good for the CCP. So they're corrupt in their system. Maybe they believe in it, but ultimately, see the incentives. Their system is just good for the CCP, and they're optimizing for the CCP, and they're not optimizing for what is good for the country of China.
Excellent. Yeah, everybody should go and check out her channel, Lay Real Talk. Of course, I'll link it in the show notes and whatever write-up that I do for this episode. So go give her a subscribe over on her channel. And that's all I have today. CK, should we wrap it up?
Yes, sir. Great show once again. Y'all, this is where the real macro signal is. We're talking about what is happening in the real world with Bitcoin in mind, obviously. To everyone watching, please like and subscribe. We are coming at you every single Wednesday with this content. The Bitcoin Magazine live team is coming at you every day, every weekday with amazing signal. And yeah, make sure to follow me on Twitter at CK_snarks. Make sure to get your Bitcoin conference ticket. Bitcoin 23, May 18th through the 20th in Miami Beach is going to be absolutely incredible. I'll be there. Hopefully Ansel shows up. BM live for 10% off. Obviously, Chris, thank you for the note. And Ansel, where can people find you? Why don't you close us out?
Yeah, shout out to Chris, the producer in the background, playing all the clips and getting all the slide deck going. So appreciate that. Guys, if you want to check out the slide deck, if you're listening to this on audio, check out, go to Bitcoin Magazine, and you can find all the articles written by Ansel Lindner, and then I will be up there. All my podcast show notes will be in there for you guys to look at all the charts and stuff. So anyway, yeah, follow me on Twitter at Ansel Lindner. Check out my Telegram, t.me/Bitcoin and Markets. I live stream 5 days a week over there. And that's it. Thanks, guys, for joining.